Chapter 597. It was autumn in October, and the sky was clear. There was a very light fragrance of flowers in the academy. The students talked and laughed as they walked in the corridors of the castle. The wind that blew in from the square vent brought a hint of bleakness and coldness. The senior students were used to the Silver Cup, held at this time of the year, and they were used to it being a topic of conversation. After all, when the Golden Cup was held next month, it would become a topic of conversation for some of them. If they didn't say a few more words, they wouldn't have anything to say. In addition, the senior students were very interested in which second-year students would stand out, whether the famous geniuses would stand out, whether there would be a dark horse that would amaze the world with a single brilliant feat, and other topics. Because the second-year students who stood out in the end would inevitably become a big help in the school championship. The second-year students could participate in the school championship and compete for the school championship for their respective schools. In the corner of the cafeteria, a few core members of the Aristocratic History Research Society sat together and elegantly tasted the halfling's special steaks with sauce. Website: https://m. Vipkanchu. VIP. Sitting opposite Mike Owen was the current president of the Aristocratic History Research Society, fifth-year student Edwin Clarissa. Edwin had a standard bright blonde hair, but his hairstyle was curly and slightly messy. His whole person exuded an extremely lazy aura. As the cousin of fairy princess Eliali Clarissa, Edwin Clarissa also had a noble royal bloodline. This was one of the main reasons why he could take over the Aristocratic History Research Society without batting an eyelid. In the Aristocratic History Research Society, a mere earl, although he was the son of one of the 36 councillors, Angus Jeffrey, was not enough. It was just that people like Edwin, who had a higher status, were not interested in these small conflicts between the societies. They were more willing to use a more pure mentality to enjoy the youth that they should have at this age. St. Marian College was like a fortress with a huge, high wall, which isolated all the dangers and conflicts from the outside world from a high wall. It didn't matter who they were or what their status was. In the academy, everyone was just a student. These nobles, who were bound by their status as soon as they left the school, could only seek a relatively pure environment in the Shang-Malian Academy. In Edwin's words, it was a rare moment of peace and quiet. If it weren't for Angus Jeffrey's disgraceful behavior, Edwin wouldn't have stood up for him. But since he was in his position, he had to shoulder his responsibilities. Since Edwin had taken the position of the president of the Aristocratic History Research Society, he didn't want to mess it up. The Aristocratic History Research Society had a mixed reputation in the academy. After all, it was an exclusive society of the Aristocratic Academy and was supported by most people in the Aristocratic Academy. Over the years, the school championship competition was basically led by the members of the Aristocratic History Research Society. Last school year, the Noble House was not as good as the Sorcerer School and lost the school championship, which was a shame. In this school year, although the top students of the Aristocratic Academy did not say anything, they were all determined to take back the school championship competition. Edwin had the same idea. The final competition of the school championship competition was divided into the dungeon competition and the duel competition. Other than the first years, each year had to select 3 to 4 people to participate in the dungeon competition's team competition and the duel competition's single competition. To be on the safe side, there would usually be 1 or 2 substitutes at crucial moments. Edwin had a better understanding of the 3rd to 6th years of the Aristocratic Academy. After all, these 4 years had participated in the school championship competition. But he didn't know much about the second years. In other words, through the Silver Cup and the Gold Cup that would follow, Kieran would try his best to select 3 to 4 suitable candidates. Mike, how much do you know about this year's second years? Edwin used a knife and fork to cut the beef and put a piece into his mouth after dipping it in sauce. He spoke clearly while chewing. Mike Owen smiled and mentioned the name again, Dake Dimming. Okay, I got it. Edwin waved his fork. Other than him. Mike Owen spat out a few more names. Teddy Dolan, D. Anna Great Bear. Dolan family and Ursa family? Edwin shook his head. I need more surprises. Other than Edwin, there were many senior students who paid special attention to the Silver Cup. In comparison, the leaders of the school championship competition from the other 3 academies were under even more pressure. Because the situation of this year's second years was too clear. Dake Dim Eng, as the top student of the second years, had already pulled apart the gap with the other students in the first years. It was really difficult to find a dual champion in each academy who could fight against him. But they couldn't choose to give up. Therefore, they could only hope for a dark horse to appear, or the few people who received the most attention would have breakthroughs. If it really didn't work, they could only tilt their focus to the dungeon competition's team competition. In short, even if there were no conditions, they had to create conditions. In this process, tilting resources was just a small matter. The Silver Cup hadn't started yet, but there were already undercurrents surging. But the second years who were going to participate in the Silver Cup didn't have so many thoughts. Most of them were immersed in the excitement of the upcoming duel. Even those who weren't qualified were ready to cheer for their classmates from their respective academies. Dake and the other 2 entered the cafeteria later than usual. They carried plates full of delicacies and walked to the area where there were more second years. They sat down and chatted while eating. Dake turned his head slightly and could see White and Luo Boat 2 seats away. These 2 mock duelists, who were about to appear in the exhibition competition, were staring at each other with bitter faces for some reason. While Dake was puzzled by this, Luo Boat, who was facing him, suddenly looked serious. His eyebrows furrowed, as if he was about to enter a battlefield. He pulled up the food in his bowl. White, who was slower by a beat, also fiercely ate faster. After a few minutes, their plates were completely empty. Then the 2 rushed out of the cafeteria. During this time, they were half a meter away from each other. The atmosphere was so tense that it seemed like a fight could break out at any time. It's just an exhibition competition, not a battlefield. What's wrong with them? Dake shook his head and continued to eat. The Silver Cup's opening ceremony would start at 2 in the afternoon. After the opening ceremony, it would directly enter the points competition. At that time, every participating student would receive a schedule. After today, they would receive a new schedule on Tuesday. If necessary, they could go to the duel club on Wednesday afternoon to apply for a schedule change. The rules of the points competition were very simple. The winner received 3 points and the loser lost 2 points. There were no ties. Every student had to participate in at least 10 duels before the end of the points competition. In the end, the total number of duels would be ranked. The top 8 would enter the main competition and use a double elimination system to determine the champion. After 10 duels, the contestants could apply to continue or stop the duels. There were a maximum of 20 duels. Based on the rules of the competition, the more duels one participated in, the higher the chances of getting a high score. Therefore, the school encouraged students to participate in as many duels as possible. The duel club would also arrange the duels as fair as possible. The points competition would be held from the beginning of October to the end of November. In December, it would be the top 8 competition. Usually, the results would be decided before Christmas. After lunch, Dake returned to the dormitory to recharge his energy. Although the Silver Cup was only an internal battle among the second-year students, there were many second-year students who made an exception. Given enough time, no one knew how high they could fly. Dake decided to treat it seriously. He gathered the magic elves and held a pre-battle meeting. He enticed them with benefits, moved them with emotions, and reasoned with them. After successfully boosting their morale, he put them back into the magic cards one by one. Sometimes, he was actually quite envious of the magic elves. As long as they entered the magic cards, they would not have to worry about insomnia at all. They could enter a state of hibernation with just a thought. After 1 or 2 hours, they would be full of energy and in full condition. This was really every human's dream. The human body was actually very fragile. If they frequently used potions to enter a deep sleep to shorten the sleep time, it would be easy to develop a dependence on the potion. In the future, it would be wishful thinking to get rid of the potion and sleep naturally. Dake placed the card bag at the head of the bed and went for an afternoon nap with the magic elves. 1:00 in the afternoon. The alarm clock rang. After Dake woke up, he first refilled a glass of apple juice, then took the card bag and began to organize the cards. The Silver Cup adopted the competition system of the newcomers' competition. The number of cards was limited to 20 to 40 cards, and the lowest value was 20 cards. In addition, one could not hold more than 3 magic cards of the same name at the same time. However, there was an adjustment in the level of the Magic Ball's barrier of life. It went from 2,000 magic points in the second level to 4,000 magic points in the third level. A barrier of life with 4,000 magic points was harder to break than one with 2,000 magic points. It could increase the margin of error for victory and defeat. And the minimum number of cards in the deck of 20 cards could be used to the extreme. However, if one could not end the battle after all 20 magic cards were used up, it would become a drawback. Therefore, the number of magic cards that one could bring would depend on the situation. As the competition schedule was notified in advance, the players of the Silver Cup could obtain the information of their opponents in advance and adjust the deck according to the opponent's usual lineup. Of course, the opponent could also adjust according to your adjustments. In short, before that, Dake decided to try to construct a set of 20 cards and then adjust accordingly. The construction idea of this set of cards had already been formed, but it had always been limited by the number of cards in the deck. He did not have many magic cards to choose from. This time, the number of cards in the deck was reduced to 20 cards. Finally, he could try it out. First, he had to confirm the main idea. This construction was based on a single Great Sin as the core. The Great Sin cards that Dake had now were Pride IX1, Pride 2x2, Greed 2x2, Bliss 2x1, Bliss 3x4, Pride 3x1, Greed 3x1, Pride 3x1. Without a doubt, Bliss and Pride occupied the majority, and Bliss was the most. A total of 4 Bliss 3 cards made the construction of the Bliss deck feasible. However, because one of the Bliss 3 cards could not be controlled, it was temporarily put aside, leaving only 3 cards. In other words, 1 Bliss 2 and 3 Bliss 3 cards were added to the deck. Then, the suitable Magic Elven cards were selected from the Magic Elven cards. They were Magic Elven Beast, Ibu-Magic Elven Beast, Ever-Changing Monster, Curse Cage, Little Demon Beast, Dream Demon Beast, Dream Demon Beast Demon Fox Beast, Dream Demon Beast. This way, there are already 9 Magic Elven cards. After that, I will add the stronger single cards. First, it must be the only level 4 Great Sin card, Pride. After that, according to Pride, I will select the more powerful Magic Elven cards that are suitable for it. For example, the Primordial Dragon Egg that can be summoned without the Sacrifice Summoning spell. This way, there are already 11 Magic Elven cards, 9 more to go. Among these 9 cards, there must be a single scabbard, weapon form. Then, I will select suitable single cards from the 3-star Magic Elven cards, such as Kettle and Hawkman Wrestling. Needless to say, Kettle, Hawkman Wrestling's ability to fly is a huge advantage. At this point, there are already 14 Magic Elven cards. After that, there are still 6 more to go. I will add the item cards and Magic Elven cards. They were Moon God Soul Eye Scythe Dagger, Moon Pendant, Underworld Soul Ring, Flight Spell. Lastly, I'll add Fairy Ibu and a Big Milk Jar. After all, it is the Elven series. Only by adding Fairy Ibu and Big Milk Jar can it be considered Elven. It is a pity that there is one less trump card of Elven cards, Vampire's Daughter. Of course, if I want to go one step further, I can add Curse Cage, Sub-Beast. But the Sub-Beast has to take care of Anti-Bird and Xiong Bao, so I will leave it for now. After careful consideration, Dake turned around and checked again. There were 8 first-tier Magic Elven cards that could be summoned normally. There were 2 Magic Elven cards that required Sacrifice Summoning. Single Scabbard, weapon form, was temporarily classified as an item card. Thus, there were 4 item cards and 7 Magic Elven cards. There were a total of 21 cards, excluding Scythe Dagger. With this, the formula for victory is complete. Elven cards: Frowny Face Magical Beast, Ivan, Magical Beast, Ever-Changing Monster, Curse Cage, Little Demon Beast, Dream Demon, Dream Demon Demon Fox, Dream Demon Kettle, Dream Demon Eagle Wrestling, Dream Demon Primordial Dragon Egg, Dream Demon Fairy Ibu, Dream Demon Big Milk Jar, Dream Demon item cards, single scabbard, weapon form. Moon God Soul Eye Scythe Dagger, Moon Pendant, magic cards, Elven Soul 3. 0 Elven Soul Eye Elven Soul 3, Moon Elven Soul 3, Moon, Pride, Underworld Soul Ring, Flight Spell. Although Dake really wanted to add something else to this deck, he held back in the end. He had to play at least 10 matches with the Silver Cup, so he had a lot of chances to experiment with other cards. For example, the Zoo series or the Elven plus Pride series. In addition, with the continuous creation of new magic cards, there was still a lot of room to reconstruct them. After confirming that the construction was completed, Dake changed into his school uniform, tidied up his appearance, and put on the Aristocrat House badge and the Duel badge. Then, he put on his card bag and left the house. The opening ceremony of the Silver Cup did not require students to participate. However, the second-year students would usually not be absent. In the common lounge of the Aristocrat House, the familiar second-year students gathered together and were full of energy. Everyone was looking forward to the opening ceremony of the Silver Cup. Dake looked at Anna and Luo C, who were mixed in with the girls, and walked towards Dolong. Have you heard? This year's opening ceremony of the Silver Cup has a special exhibition match. Do you still need to hear? The notice board outside the castle has already posted it. It's a mock duel. I've seen them play it before. Should we try it too? We'll see. A game is a game after all. It looks okay, but it's a little childish. The second-year boys of the Aristocrat House gathered together and naturally talked about this kind of topic. Dake did not sit down. Instead, he walked to Dolong's side and asked casually, "When are you going to leave?" Dolong was already a leader and could not be surprised. He turned around and said, 1:30. From here, we can find a seat in the ring of the open-air duel arena. However, the second-year seats have already been arranged. Hey, Dake, how are your preparations? Dake smiled and said, "How else can I do? I'm just playing around." I'm relieved to hear that. Dolong's smile gradually became wider. Then, he suddenly turned his head and shouted to the second-year boys, "Brothers, the Champions Trophy has been sent to the Aristocrat House in advance." Oh. The great Dake Dimming is about to arrive at his most loyal silver throne. The second-year boys suddenly cheered. The girls on the other side looked at the boys who were making a ruckus like children with disdain. Anna and Luo C were leaning against each other. One was throwing milk candy into her mouth, while the other was stuffing milk candy into the other's mouth. 1:30 quickly arrived. The students in the common lounge got up one after another and rushed out of the castle like a tide to the open-air duel arena. When they left the castle and the open-air duel arena came into view, the students suddenly stopped in their tracks. Then, there was a sudden clamor. Dake suddenly raised his head in the crowd and was almost immediately dazzled by the silver. He saw that the Shang Malian Academy's open-air duel arena, which was even more magnificent than the Colosseum in Rome, was suddenly covered in a layer of bright silver. The entire duel arena seemed to have been painted silver. It lost a bit of its ancient fierceness and gained a bit of its modern luxury. Last year's Silver Cup didn't have this kind of decoration. The senior students also raised their heads and exclaimed. They had a different kind of expectation for this year's Silver Cup. Because of this, the students paused for a moment before quickly moving forward again. Their footsteps were much faster. The duel club and the staff hurriedly maintained order and led the crowd to the inner auditorium. The second-year students had a fixed auditorium during the opening ceremony, so they didn't need to fight with others. Dake and the others quickly arrived at their seats and sat down. He was sandwiched between Doran and Pitten. He only felt that autumn had suddenly become hot. Doran couldn't hide his excitement even after sitting down. "Dake, do you know who's in the exhibition match?" Although Dake knew, he still cooperated. "I took a look when I walked out of the castle. There were 2 pairs of silhouettes on the poster for the exhibition match. There should be 4 people." Doran immediately said, "I heard that 2 of them are from the second year. Unfortunately, they don't seem to be from the Noble Academy." "Who did you hear that from?" Dake rolled his eyes and said, "Who could it be?" "Who knows, it looks like 2 boys." As Doran spoke, he suddenly became excited. But the other pair seems to be girls. Just from the silhouette, I can tell that they must be beautiful seniors. Dake chuckled, why can't they also be second-year students? Doran waved his hand and said with a look of disdain, that kind of tall and girls, we don't have any in this year. Dark shrugged his shoulders and said, you can't just say things like that. If someone were to hear it. Oh, someone has already heard it. Good luck, Doran. Behind Doran, the two girls from the Noble Academy glared at the back of his head as if he had killed their father. Dake had a look of schadenfreude on his face. As 2:00 approached, all of the second-year students and professors were seated. The flow of people entering the duel arena gradually decreased. Those who wanted to watch the opening ceremony had basically all arrived. In the center of the duel arena, the ground suddenly bulged into a high platform. Dressed in a silver-white dress, the female host looked like a fairy. Senior Judy was already standing on the platform. She was holding a microphone that looked like a loudspeaker, and a little elf wearing a princess dress was flying on her shoulder. After not seeing her for a long time, Senior Judy was still as charming as ever. With a smile as warm as the sun, she gracefully bowed in the direction of the audience. Snap! With a snap of her fingers, an elegant melody immediately filled the duel arena. After a while, projections of the audience from all over the major regions appeared outside the arena. The projection of the Royal Capital's dueling hall was right behind the seats of the second years. Those familiar figures were all sitting in the front row. Valkyrie. Yvette smiled sweetly. To her right sat Silver Wolf Knight, Camilla and Ares Olga, while to her left sat Viscount Flotty. It was obvious that Viscount Flotty's expression was a bit reserved. It was clear that the Duke's sudden invitation made this Viscount Flotty, who had already booked a ticket but wasn't in the front row, feel uneasy. Of course, there was another reason why she was so reserved. On the left of the Viscount Flotty, only 3 seats away, eldest Prince Charles was sitting there with a smile on his face. Next to the eldest prince sat 2 of his trusted aides, who were also wearing casual clothes. However, eldest Princess Eliza wasn't here today because she was busy with work. In the 5th row from the back, Viscount Gretbar and Viscount Flotty were sitting together, but the two politely exchanged a few words and didn't say anything else. Without their wives by their side, the 2 viscounts couldn't remain calm. Standing on the opening stage of the Silver Cup again and feeling the atmosphere more intense than in previous years, I feel honored. Ladies and gentlemen, hello, I am Judy, the host of this year's Silver Cup. Senior Judy's voice spread throughout the arena. Whether it was inside or outside the arena, everyone quieted down. However, in a certain corner, a group of fans took the opportunity to shout. Judy smiled and ignored the shouts of Judy, Judy, I love you, and continued to speak. As everyone knows, the Silver Cup is a stage specially set up for newcomers, and this year's newcomers have already left a deep impression on us. For example, the newcomers who performed brilliantly in the competition a few years ago, the newcomer who won the lower grade competition in the Easter Duel Festival in the first half of the year, and the newcomer that countless people care about. After this afternoon's opening ceremony, they will all come out one by one and bring more exciting duels to everyone. Then, the opening ceremony of this year's Silver Cup begins. Senior Sister Judy immediately stepped down from the stage, and the 2 male and female hosts of the opening ceremony took over. Then, they began the performance that was similar to a cultural performance. The Shang Malian Academy's duel arena wasn't only used for duels. Some other events in the academy would occasionally be held here. For example, singing and dancing, riding competitions, and so on. Every time a large-scale competition opened, a band formed by the students of the academy would perform on stage. Some of the audience might feel bored, but a performance of this level was actually rare. Some people even bought tickets to the opening ceremony just to watch the performance. The entire performance lasted for half an hour. Finally, the finale had appeared. At this time, the second-year students had already discovered that the noisiest Luo Boat and White weren't present. Combined with the publicity of the mock duel and the silhouettes on the poster, the 2 contestants in this exhibition match had already stood out. Although the students of the Aristocrat Academy weren't satisfied, the students of the Night Academy were very excited. Some people even wiped their tears and pretended to cry, "Our hero has finally made a name for himself." In the corner of the ring, Blood Maiden Ophelia Bullard, who had changed her face, also appeared in the spectators' seats. Next to her sat Hephaestus Doragon. Hephaestus received the notice that she had passed the examination yesterday afternoon. In her excitement, she packed her luggage overnight and moved into the academy. She lived in the teacher's dormitory early. Today was the first time she had watched her daughter's duel live. Although it was an exhibition match, she couldn't miss it. Thus, when the time came in the afternoon, she rushed to the duel hall and found Ophelia Bullard in the crowd. In the true dragon's eyes, Ophelia's disguise made her stand out like a crane among chickens. Hephaestus and Ophelia had similar experiences. They were both fellow prisoners who had escaped from Baudya prison. However, the two of them weren't that familiar. However, meeting in a special place like St. Marian Academy gave the two unfamiliar people a reason to get to know each other better. "So, why did you disguise yourself to enter the Shang Malian Academy?" Hephaestus looked at Ophelia, her golden-red dragon eyes flickering. Ophelia just stared at the performance on stage and asked casually, "What about you? You escaped with great difficulty. Why didn't you go back to your divine dragon island?" Hephaestus raised her head, her face full of pride. "Why should I go back? Things are different now. I'm already a professor in this academy." From the moment she received the letter of appointment, it meant that she was already under the protection of the Shang Malian Academy. Ophelia's eyes flashed with surprise, but she didn't show it. Facing Hephaestus' aggressive attitude, she just said indifferently, "I've already lived in the academy for nearly a year." In other words, Hephaestus was an outsider. Hephaestus immediately realized that this fellow prisoner was also under the protection of the Shang Malian Academy. Whether it was in the past or the present, the two of them seemed to be a bit similar. Thus, the hostility disappeared, and they started to talk about some unimportant topics. However, they didn't mention anything about their children. However, with the opening exhibition match about to begin, that little secret was destined to be exposed. Senior Sister Judy returned to the stage and introduced the simulated duel according to the Academy's request. This was the first time the audience came into contact with the information about the simulated duel. At first, they were confused, and there were even many people who cursed the Shang Malian Academy for using rotten money to insert advertisements in the opening ceremony. Moreover, it was a paid advertisement. But when the concept of a universal duel was put forward, the attention of tens of thousands of people was instantly attracted. For those who weren't Magister duels, what was their biggest regret? Without a doubt, it was that they couldn't personally go on the stage. And this time, the simulated duel, introduced by the Shang Malian Academy, perfectly solved this problem. When the audience gradually understood what kind of game the simulated duel was, excitement and desire appeared on their faces. The only thing that prevented them from fully expressing their excitement was the fact that they had yet to see this so-called simulated duel with their own eyes. A smile appeared on Judy's face. She knew that she had already raised the audience's expectations to the highest level. Thus, whether the promotion of the simulated duel would be successful or not depended on whether the next two simulated duels could satisfy the majority of the audience. Next, let's welcome the son of the hero Brett Gouda, White Gouda, and his best friend, Luo Boat Broheim, onto the stage. As the first batch of fans of the simulated duel, our dear hero's son will publicly demonstrate its charm on the stage today. Applause. Papa Papa Pa. It was the first time White and Luo Boat received such enthusiastic applause. Even during the Academy assignment ceremony, the students who knew he was a hero's son weren't that enthusiastic about him. He held his heart, which felt like it was going to jump out at any moment, and went onto the stage with Luo Boat. Then, Judy introduced each of them separately, and then began to explain the rules. In the first edition, 3 complete sets of cards were neatly stacked on the table. White and Luo Boat would choose 40 cards from these 3 sets of cards on the spot, and then duel. They just learned that the rules had changed yesterday, and since then, they had been flipping through the illustrations all night. When they looked at each other, their eyes were filled with hostility. Luo Boat, there is only one winner in a duel. Are you talking about me? White. No, you know that you can't beat me in a duel. But that's a magic duel. In fact, in this simulated duel and the past magic chess games, you've lost more than you've won. I'm just not serious. Then you should be serious and let me see. Damn it. Che. After a few words, the two were at daggers drawn. Senior Judy smiled as she pushed forward the procedure. The specific rules are as follows. Roll the dice to decide who will choose first. The number of cards that can be chosen each time is 2, until all 40 cards are collected. Now let's roll the dice. White and Luo both picked up the dice on the table at the same time. The magic projection magnified the dice projection so that the audience could see it clearly. The two swallowed slightly and threw the dice at the same time. In the ring-shaped auditorium, Dake blocked Dolong and Pitten's interference and carefully watched the exhibition match. The success of this exhibition match was very important to the public announcement of the simulated duel. He also needed to improve the cards according to the problems that occurred during the duel. And White and Luo both skills weren't particularly high, so they could be used as tools to educate the audience. He believed that after this exhibition match, the audience should have a preliminary impression of the rules of the simulated duel. And then the appearance of Panduola and Winnie would bring the audience's impression of the simulated duel to a new height. I hope it will go well. Dake couldn't help but secretly pray. Claire and the twins were also watching nearby. They were quite relaxed and were full of confidence in this exhibition match. On the other side, Ophelia Bullard subconsciously paid more attention to White on the stage. Hephaestus only took a glance and knew what was going to happen. And White and Luo boat's dice finally stopped rolling. White. 5 Luo boat. 1 inch. It seems that our dear hero's son has taken the priority. Let's see which 5 cards he'll pick. When Judy announced, she especially emphasized the title of hero's son, making this exhibition match more important in people's minds. White was slightly happy after taking the priority and immediately reached for a card. He had been thinking hard and finally decided on his strategy before the match began, so his goal was obvious. Luo Boat looked at the direction of his hand and immediately realized which 2 cards he wanted. His expression suddenly changed. Because that was also the card he wanted. Counter shield. Get it. White's voice was full of excitement. With 2 counter shields in his hands, victory was in his hands. The huge projection above their heads also showed the face of the counter shield. Judy began to introduce it as if she was familiar with it. The audience were basically dueling enthusiasts, so it was very easy for them to connect the effects of this type of card. Soon, there was an uproar. Because the effect of this card was too strong. Although the effect could only be used once, it could completely reflect the attack of the magic elf. It could be said to be a decisive card. Damn it! After being angry, Luo Boat took the last counter shield. Then, he reached for another card, Blue-Eyed White Dragon. Although this Blue Eyes White Dragon was only a 9-star white board card, it was the elf with the strongest attack and defense in this edition of the card. Card name, Blue Eyes White Dragon. Level, Attack, 5,000. Defense, 4,500. Ultimate skill, none. As long as I succeed in summoning the Blue Eyes White Dragon, I will be able to stand in the land of no worship. Luo Boat carried out the idea of being strong and strong. First, he took the Blue Eyes White Dragon. Then, he looked nervously at White, afraid that he would take the other 2 cards as well. However, White did not touch the 2 Blue Eyes White Dragon cards. Instead, he took the 2 3-star Kettle cards. In the first edition of the duel card, there were not many elf cards with special ultimate skills. Kettle was one of them. However, this Kettle card only had one ultimate skill, and that was Sturdy. Card name, Kettle. Level, Attack, 0. Defense, 2,200. Ultimate skill, Sturdy, a first-tier magic elf with an attack of 2,200. It also has the ultimate skill, Sturdy. It won't be killed in one hit. As long as it defends, it will have an invincible shield and a 3-star offering. White had already decided on his core idea. When he took the 2 kettle cards, he thought that he would definitely win. The battle for the cards became more and more intense. But the 2's card sets gradually diverged from each other, forming 2 completely different sets of card sets. The audience also got to know the first version of the simulated duel card. They soon discovered that most of the elven cards in the duel card simulation were owned by the students of the Shang Malian Academy. Of course, this was intentional. Otherwise, why would they be sold as a set with the model Easter egg? When the stage of the duel card simulation was over, the audience's interest was gradually raised. Below the stage, the corners of Doc Diamond's mouth curled up. After watching the duel card simulation, he knew that even if the duel card simulation was not exciting enough, it would at least show some special features that would make people's eyes light up. White and Luo Boat both had their own ideas. They were not the type to use jack-of-all-trades tactics. After that, the duel card simulation was hosted by Judy. She would also be the referee and commentator. White and Luo Boat put on the duel plate and stood on both sides of the stage. Then the 2 of them looked at each other and shouted at the same time. Log in, Hero's Son. Log in, Iron Fist Fighter. Connection successful. Hero's Son vs. Iron Fist Fighter. Werther's login name had been changed upon request. Although he was very embarrassed, he still read it out loud. Almost at the same time, heavy and thick iron chains appeared under the feet of the 2 of them. They spread forward along the 2 sides and connected instantly. Click. The duel card simulation was completed. Battle begins. The majestic voice from the duel plate made the audience subconsciously ignore the embarrassing self-report of the 2 people on the stage. The changes in the arena immediately made them realize that the duel disc that simulated a duel was definitely not a shoddy product. Boom! The jumping flame projection divided the entire duel plate simulation into 2 large areas. Hidden card area, summoning area, field area, and the new concept, tomb area, were all separated one after another. At the same time, burning flame frames appeared on both sides of the duel plate simulation. The number representing the health of both sides in the frames jumped from 0 to 8,000. Duel. 10,300 words. The number of words in the duel plate simulation is free. 8,000 taels of silver guaranteed. 2,000 taels of silver bounty. After today's update, the bounty will be paid. Pay it back in 5 to 7 days. A 1/15. Chapter 598. The rules of the simulated duel basically follow the rules of the magic duel, but there are some changes. We can see that after the duel plates in the hands of the 2 players are connected to each other, it can automatically generate a duel field, and the number in the flame box represents the life value of the duelist. Senior Sister Judy quickly explained. Just like the magic ball in the magic duel, the life value of the simulated duelist can also be adjusted, but there are only 3 levels: 2,000, 4,000, and 8,000. The field of the simulated duel is divided into a total of 4 areas. The area in front of the duelist is the hidden card area. Only by placing cards in the hidden card area during your turn can you activate them during your opponent's turn. And in front of the hidden card area is the summoning area that we are most familiar with. The hidden card area is the same as the summoning area. There are only 5 spaces. This means that at most, you can place 5 cards or summon 5 magic spirits at the same time. And the single area in the middle of the field is the field area, which is used to place the activated field card. It is slightly different from the field card in the magic duel. The field card in the simulated duel can cover all areas, and there can only be one type. The field card released later can replace the field card released earlier. Finally, there is the tomb area. This is the biggest difference between the simulated duel field and the magic duel field. The magic item cards that were used in the duel or the magic elf cards that were defeated will be placed in the tomb area. As long as you have a resurrection card, you can return the tomb area magic spirit cards to the field. Okay, the introduction of the field ends here. There is only one type of duel plate now, but there will be more types of duel plates when they are officially released in the future. Each duel plate will have a duel field with a different theme. Everyone, please look forward to it. When Senior Sister Judy finally finished the introduction, White and Luo Boat had already gotten 5 cards in the preparation stage. Since it was a turn-based card game, there was a dice-throwing session before drawing the cards. White got the first move by 1 point. However, in a simulated duel, the one who made the first move might not necessarily have the advantage, because he couldn't attack in the first round. And just like the Magic duel, this simulated duel couldn't draw a card in the first round. From the second round onwards, 2 cards could be drawn from the top of the deck at the frequency of 2 cards per round. You can only use normal summon once per turn. Normal summons and sacrificial summons belong to the category of normal summons. The summon magic elf could choose either attack expression or defense expression. For the time being, the rule of inside expression had not been added. Attack indication. Attack the enemy with attack power. Defensive stance. Defend against the enemy. Every round, each summoned magic guide sprite could change the way it was represented. Only attack indication could initiate an attack. Under normal circumstances, only 1 attack could be made per round. After attack ends, you can't change the way you express it. It's decided on you, Kettle Kettle. In the first round of battle phase, White summoned Kettle Kettle with defense expression, and then stamped 2 cards in the hidden card area. Kettle Kettle's 2,200 points of defense was like a mountain in front of Luo Boat. When White announced end of round, the duel changed to Luo Boat's turn. Luo Boat looked serious and summoned Bear's Den with defense expression. Then, he stamped a card in the hidden card area and announced the end of the duel. "Aren't these my 3 little bears?" Diana, who was below the stage, suddenly blinked and asked curiously. A simple house made of red bricks was projected in the summoning area. It was Diana's signature magic guide sprite, Bear's Den. Card name, Bear's Den. Level, *****. Attack power, 0. Defense power, 1,200. Ultimate skill, 3 little bears. Although Bear's Den's defense was not as good as Kettle Kettle's, its ultimate skill, 3 little bears, could transform it into 3 1-star little bears after it was destroyed in battle. Its application was quite similar to Kettle Kettle's, Sturdy. It could resist 1 attack and obtain 3 1-star offerings. Then, the duel entered its second round. White drew 2 new cards from the top of the deck and was overjoyed. "I'm sorry, Luo Boat. Let's end this duel without any suspense. Activate hidden card, Taboo Love." The Taboo Love, evolved from the core Magic Guide card, suddenly released a pink fog after the hidden card area was opened. The fog faintly formed the silhouette of a girl. She opened her arms towards Luo Boat's Bear's Den, as if she wanted to hug it. Then, to the audience's surprise, a red heart suit symbol appeared on the top of the brick house. Don't ask why the brick house could be charmed by a girl equals. After the Bear's Den was charmed by Taboo Love, it instantly moved to White's summoning area and pointed its sword at Luo Boat with attack indication. Although its attack power was 0, White obtained control of this magic guide fairy for 1 round. However, this was slightly different from the real Taboo Love. Similar cards in the simulated duel could obtain complete control of the opponent's first-tier magic guide fairy, including using it as an offering. Luo Boat. White's voice suddenly became louder. "I already have 2 3-star magic guide fairies in my field." According to the rules of the simulated duel, as long as the total number of offerings is greater than or equal to the number of magic guide fairies in my hand, I can sacrifice them to summon them. Now, I will use my 2 3-star magic guide fairies in my field as an offering to summon my 5-star magic guide fairy, Lion Beast. Amidst White's excited shouts, Kettle Pot and Bear's Den were sent into the graveyard area as an offering, while the tall and mighty Lion Beast appeared brazenly with a roar. Lion Beast has the ultimate skill, Righteous Heart, so it won't be affected by any magic. Lion Beast, Beast King Fist. Card name, Lion Beast. Level, attack power, 2300, defense power, 2300, ultimate skill, righteous heart, beast king fist. Wasn't the ultimate skill of lion beast, but it was the bugle call to attack. As lion beast swung its fist, a lion-shaped energy wave blasted towards the opposite field. 80005700 Luo boat's HP suddenly decreased by a large amount. Hero's son won the first round. In the audience, Prince Charles slightly raised his spirits and muttered with a hint of mockery, "The hero is using the magic elf that the hero should use." His confidant immediately praised him. After all, he's the hero. Charles slightly squinted his eyes and replied, "Yes, he's the hero." On the stage, White was full of vigor. Luo Boat stared at Lion Beast and gritted his teeth. His trump card was Counter Shield. However, among all the magic elves in the first edition, Lion Beast was the only one that didn't consume any magic cards. It was the absolute nemesis of Counter Shield. However, this Lion Beast was only a 5-star card. Although its attack and defense were average, it wasn't at the top. After simplification, Luo Boat only needed to satisfy the requirements of the star level to summon a magic elf in the simulation duel. Therefore, his cards were all big cards. 2300 attack. How can I break through it? Luo Boat solemnly drew 2 new cards from the top of the deck. He bet his life's luck on it. Here it comes. His eyes flashed as he put the card into his hand. Then, he took out a card and opened it. Activate field card, Valley of Wind. Following Luo Boat's shout, the sound effect of the howling wind suddenly sounded. The field area, in the middle of the field, showed the Valley of Wind. From both sides of the field, the projection of the soil quickly rose up, forming a slightly transparent realistic view of the valley. Then, Luo Boat immediately took out the second card and hurriedly shouted, "I activate Eye of the Wind Elemental from my hand. Special summon Eye of the Wind Elemental, Magic Elf, Stormblade. Card name, Stormblade, Level, Race, Elemental, Attribute, Flight, Attack, 2300, Defense, 1400, Ultimate Skill, Eye of the Wind Elemental." When the Wind Elemental with a turquoise cloak appeared in Luo Boat's summoning area, Mike Owen revealed a smile. Luo Boat, who had been specially summoned by the godly draw, became even more excited. In the Valley of Wind field, the Flight Magic Elf's attack will increase by 200 points. Stormblade's attack will increase to 2,500 points. Then, I will summon a 3-star Magic Elf, Oxhead Axe King. Card name, Oxhead Axe King. Level, Attack, 1700. Defense, 900. Ultimate Skill, None. Although Oxhead Axe King is only a 3-star white tier, it has a super strong attack of 1,700 points. Now it's my turn, White. Luo Boat's voice suddenly rose as he roared with incomparable confidence. Stormblade, slay, Lion Beast. The atmosphere in the field instantly became lively. The spectators who loved duels loved to see the duelists counterattack in seemingly unsolvable situations. Luo Boat's counterattack this time wasn't very exciting, but it was powerful. However, the spectators didn't forget that Hero's son had snatched 2 counter-shield cards at the start of the duel. As expected. Just as Robert's confidence was about to overflow, Victor calmly flipped open one of the cover cards in the cover zone. Activate Magic Card, Counter Shield. In the next second, a spinning shield of light appeared in front of the Lion Beast, and the Stormblade's attack was instantly reflected. With a bang, the Stormblade was instantly shattered. F***CK. Luo Boat's face suddenly turned ashen. Although he knew that White had 2 counter-shield cards, Luo Boat still attacked with his head, and as expected, he fell heavily. Stormblade's attack power, plus 200, was higher than his defense by 1,100 points. After this attack, not only did Luo Boat not get rid of the Lion Beast, but he also received 1,100 points of damage. 57004600. Suddenly, he was left with only 4,600 HP. However, White's HP was still full. He looked at the Tauren Axe King in his summoning area with a gloomy expression. White suddenly smiled and said, "Luo Boat, show me what else you have." Luo Boat took a deep breath and said, "I'll cover another card." End of round. The third round. White had a huge advantage, and even the way he drew cards was very different. He took out 2 cards and looked at them. A smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. He slowly put them into his hand and said, "I'll summon a 3-star magic guide elf, Rotten Slime. It's an attack. Card name, Rotten Slime. Level? Attack power, 1200. Defense power, 800. Ultimate skill, Feign Death." When the mud-like magic elf was summoned, Tom Nixon, who was below the stage, was slightly moved. After Victor summoned the Rotten Slime, he placed another item card in the hidden card area and flipped it open. Activate item card, Lion King Pill. Draw your sword, Lion Beast. The Lion Beast's hand suddenly projected a demon sword. Card name, Lion King Pill. Type, item card. Effect, attack plus 500, defense minus 500, for the Lion Beast. With a defense of 2,300 points, the price of losing 500 points of defense is almost nothing. And its attack power will increase to 2,800 points. Luo Boat, do you hear the call of the Grim Reaper? White suddenly stretched out his hand and shouted, "Lion Beast, attack." Luo Boat only had 1 magic elf on the field, so he didn't need to choose a target. The Lion Beast got into a stance and swung its sword. A ray of light shot out, and the Oxhead Axe King fell. Luo Boat's HP fell by another 1,100 points. 46003500. Rotten Slime. Attack. White shouted again. After the Oxhead Axe King was sent to the graveyard area, Luo Boat's summon area no longer had any magic elves. The Rotten Slime's attack directly damaged Luo Boat's HP. Although it only had 1,200 points of attack, Luo Boat's remaining HP of 3,500 points couldn't withstand the damage. The moment White gave the order, he opened his cover card. Activate magic card. Counter shield. He couldn't wait until the end. Luo Boat knew that with White's personality, he would definitely use the Lion Beast in the next round. And with the Lion Beast's 2,800 points of attack, if he didn't activate this counter shield now, there would be no future. With the activation of counter shield, the Rotten Slime's attack was successfully reflected. White finally took the damage. His HP fell from 800 points to 7,600 points. But the Rotten Slime didn't die. The sure kill skill, Feign Death, allowed it to stand up again. White smiled and said calmly, "End of turn. It's my turn." Luo Boat suddenly pulled out 2 new cards and added them to his hand. Then he glanced at the 2 magic elves on White's field and did some quick calculations in his mind. With Guard Expression, I usually summon Kettle Kettle. 2 more cards. End of turn. In his summoning area, the little tortoise-like magic elven stood alone. Is this the end? White immediately drew his cards. With 2 new cards in hand, he glanced at Luo Boat's cover card zone and said, "Luo Boat, you don't have counter shield anymore, bluffing won't work." Luo Boat said in a deep voice, "You can try." White's eyes flashed as he thought quickly. In Luo Boat's deck, other than counter shield, there are also Failed Sacrifice, Mutual Destruction, Soul Summoning Spell. But these magic cards won't work in front of the Lion Beast of Justice. There's a high possibility that Failed Sacrifice is in his 2 cover cards. I can't take the risk. So he gave up the option of summoning an 8-star magic elven and pulled out another card. With Attack Expression, I usually summon Troll. Card name, Troll. Attack, 1,500. Defense, 1,400. Sure kill skill, Suicidal Tackle. With the appearance of White's signature magic elven Troll, there were a total of 3 magic elves in his summon zone. Then he pulled out another card from his hand and pressed it on the cover card zone. The empty cover card zone finally had one more card. Next, he looked up at Luo Boat and ordered the Lion Beast, attack, Kettle. Roar. The Lion Beast roared and slashed at the air with Lion King Pill. Kettle, on the opposite side, received a slash of 2,800 attack. Although its defense was as high as 2,200 points, it couldn't block the Lion Beast's attack. But in the next second, the Sure Kill skill, Sturdy, was triggered. Kettle's defense fell from 2,200 points to 0 points. But it wasn't sent into the Tomb Zone. And because Kettle was a defensive skill, Luo Boat wasn't hurt. But there were still 2 magic elves in White's field. He immediately ordered, Rotten Slime, attack, Kettle. With an acidic attack, Kettle finally couldn't take it anymore and fell. There was nothing in front of Luo Boat again. Seeing that Luo Boat didn't activate the cover card even after Kettle fell, White pointed forward and shouted, Last Glimmer, Troll, attack directly. Bang! 35002000. Troll's Sacrificial Impact could increase its attack by 500, but after it was activated, Troll would also be sent into the Tomb Zone. Therefore, White didn't activate Sacrificial Impact. Luo Boat still didn't open the cover card even when his health was only left with 2,000 points. White made up his mind and sneered, Luo Boat, you only have 1 round left. Let me extinguish your life that's like a candle in the wind. You can't say for sure. Luo Boat suppressed the restlessness in his heart and slowly pulled out 2 cards from the top of the deck and looked at them carefully. Then, without changing his expression, he added the 2 cards to his hand and opened one of the cards in the Hidden Card Zone. Activate Magic Card. Soul Summoning Spell. Soul Summoning Spell's effect is to summon a magic elven of no more than 3 stars from your Tomb Zone. I choose to summon Ox Head Axe King. When the Ox Head Axe King returned to the duel stage, Luo Boat's lips curled into an imperceptible smile. The successful summoning of Ox Head Axe King meant that the card in White's Hidden Card Zone wasn't a magic card that could destroy special summons. Therefore, he immediately pulled out a card from his hand and activated it. Activate Magic Card. Forbidden Love. There were a total of 3 Forbidden Love cards, so it was impossible for Luo Boat to not get a single one. Even though Forbidden Love could only control the first-tier magic elven for 1 round, it could be offered as a sacrifice during that round. Luo Boat stared at White's face and pointed at the troll in White's Summon Zone. Luo Boat's idea was simple. Troll's attack was higher than Rotten Slime, so he chose to NTR Troll. In the blink of an eye, the troll with a heart on its head appeared in Luo Boat's Summon Zone. The corner of Victor's mouth twitched as expected. Even though White looked calm, Luo Boat, who was very familiar with him, noticed his nervousness. Robert, on the other hand, was enjoying this feeling. He randomly pulled out the second card from his hand and said to Victor, I will once again activate the Sure Kill skill, Eye of the Wind Elemental, from my hand. Special summon the magic elf with Eye of the Wind Elemental, Eye of the Storm. Card name, Eye of the Storm, a level. Attack, 1800, Defense, 700, Ultimate Skill, Eye of the Wind Elemental, Eye of the Storm, was only a 4-star magic elemental, and its attack and defense were not high, but it also had the Eye of the Wind Elemental, and could be summoned in a wind field similar to the Valley of the Wind. When the tornado-shaped Eye of the Storm appeared in Robert's summoning area, his summoning area went from being empty to suddenly having 3 magic guide fairies. Judging from the number of magic elves, the tables had turned. White, I've told you before. No matter if it's a magic chess or a simulated duel, the winner will always be the one who can keep his cool. Luo Boat said as he took out the strongest, coolest, and most arrogant magic elemental card from his hand and raised it high. Look carefully. I already have a 4-star magic elemental and 2 3-star magic elves on the field. I'll use these 3 magic elves as sacrifices to summon. Come out, Blue Eyes White Dragon. The White Dragon's roar sounded from the duel plate, and the 3 sacrifices were sent to the graveyard. The strongest 9-star magic elemental, Blue Eyes White Dragon, was actually summoned by Luo Boat. Luo Boat raised his eyebrows. He regained his confidence once again. He could clearly see that White's expression was completely unreadable. He must be frightened, right? Judy, who was also a commentator, followed the atmosphere of the stadium and exclaimed, "What a shock!" Contestant Robert actually succeeded in summoning a 9-star magic elf in just one round. Although this Blue Eyes White Dragon doesn't have a sure kill skill, its high attack power and defense still make it a terrifying existence in the current version of the simulated duel. It even reminds me of the Sky White Dragon. Judy's exclamation brought the audience to their senses. The Blue Eyes White Dragon and the Sky White Dragon were both 9-star white dragons, and they did have some similarities. Then, more people placed high hopes on the Blue Eyes White Dragon. They wanted to see Luo Boat drive the Blue Eyes White Dragon to counterattack and win. Of course, they couldn't be too hasty. Luo Boat had just suffered a loss. The audience also saw it. And now, White still had a card in the hidden card area. If this card was the counter shield as well. Once bitten, twice shy, Luo Boat was even more cautious. But, do you think I don't dare to attack? He suddenly smiled at White. Then, under White's surprised gaze, he pointed at the lion beast and shouted, "Attack the lion beast! Shoot out destructive white light." So what if that hidden card was the counter shield? It was just a temporary loss. It was impossible to not lose in a duel. Luo Boat was never afraid of failure. And this time, he made the right bet. White didn't activate the hidden card. The Blue Eyes White Dragon shot out white light and melted the lion beast on the spot. The fans of Hero's Son in the field exclaimed in shock. As the lion beast fell, the item card Lion King Ball was also sent to the graveyard. In White's field, only the rotten slime that had used fake death was left. His HP had dropped from 7,600 points to 5,400 points. The situation was reversed in an instant. Luo Boat gained a greater advantage than White. It was just as he thought. When he successfully summoned the Blue Eyes White Dragon, he was already in an invincible position. "Now it's your turn, White." Luo Boat looked at the last card in his hand and announced the end of the round. "Don't be complacent too early." White took a deep breath and drew 2 cards from the top of the deck. Although the Blue Eyes White Dragon was powerful, it was not invincible. As long as he drew the counter shield, he could completely block the Blue Eyes White Dragon's attack. In addition, magic cards such as Mutual Destruction could also be effective. If he could draw the Soul Summoning spell, he could also find a 3-star magic elf in the graveyard and sacrifice it to summon a 3-star magic elf. In short, there were many ways, and it was far from time to give up. White regained his composure and looked at the 2 new cards in his hand. Then he stared at Luo Boat and placed one of the cards in the hidden card area. Then he said slowly, "I will change the rotten slime from attack indication to defense indication, and then use defense indication to summon a 3-star magic elf, Kettle Kettle." Kettle Kettle. Kettle Kettle. Again. After summoning Kettle Kettle, White said calmly, "My turn is over." Luo Boat stared at White's face carefully, but this time, he could not read White's thoughts. He quickly drew out 2 new cards, then pulled out one of them and said, "I'll first summon Ox Head Axe King, and use Attack Expression, then immediately attack Rotten Slime." Moo. With the Ox Head Axe King's roar, the Rotten Slime was finally split in half and sent into the graveyard area. But on Werther's field, there was still a kettle that stood tall and strong. Should I continue to attack or wait for the next turn? Luo Boat stared at White's hidden card area, especially the card that had just been placed in. He did not know why, but he had a very strong intuition that the card was Counter Shield. Once the Blue Eyes White Dragon attacked, White would immediately activate Counter Shield. And if he did not attack, he would still be confident of victory. A magic elf with more attack power than the Blue Eyes White Dragon did not exist in the first version. Blue Eyes White Dragon. Turn is over. After thinking up to this point, Luo Boat finally decided to play safe. And he did not hide his cards. The atmosphere in the field became tense. After drawing out 2 new cards, Victor only added 1 more card to the hidden card area before announcing the end of the session. He now had 3 cover cards on the field, as well as his only magic guide sprite, Kettle. Its 2200 defense was enough for Kettle to block most of the attacks except for the Blue Eyes White Dragon. And the more he did so, the more Luo Boat was afraid. In Luo Boat's eyes, White was clearly weaving a trap. He knew that he could not step in under such circumstances. Therefore, after drawing a new card, Luo Boat made a prompt decision and summoned a second Blade of the Storm. The 5-star Blade of the Storm had an attack power that surpassed the defense of Kettle. Then, he usually summoned another 3-star Magic Guide Spirit, Serenity Spellcaster. Card name, Serenity Spellcaster. Level, ******. Attack, 1400. Defense, 600. Ultimate skill, Hat Trick. Serenity Spellcaster was also from Michael Owen's Serenity series of Magic Elf cards. Its Sure Kill skill, Hat Trick, gave it a temporary bonus of 350 points of attack and 350 points of defense. When needed, its attack and defense were slightly higher than Oxhead Hatchet King by 50 points. After Luo Boat summoned Serenity Spellcaster, he immediately gave the order to attack. Blade of the Storm, assassinate, Kettle. Luo Boat stared at White as he gave the order. But White still did not activate any of the 3 hidden cards. And when Kettle was about to be destroyed, it successfully activated its ultimate skill, Sturdy. This caused its attack and defense to be reduced to 0. Then Luo Boat gave Oxhead Hatchet King the order to attack. Kettle was sent into Tomb Area. Let's see how you're going to turn the tables. Luo Boat suppressed the urge to give Blue Eyes White Dragon the order to attack and whispered to himself, "End of turn." White drew cards again, but he did not have a magic elf on the field, so he could not summon it without a sacrifice. And he did not choose the Wind Element series of specially summoned cards. He could not use Valley of the Wind, like Luo Boat, to quickly summon them. Even if he wanted to copy Luo Boat's moves, it would be difficult to do so. And if this stalemate continued, once Luo Boat used Blade of the Storm and Oxhead Hatchet King as sacrifices to summon a new high-star magic elf, he would be in a hopeless situation. Trust the cards will tell you the answer. White murmured and took out the 2 new cards to take a closer look. The next moment, he raised his eyebrows, and his excitement was obvious. Luo Boat, you didn't seize the opportunity. After saying that, Victor opened up a card in the hidden card area. I'll activate the first magic card, Soul Summoning Spell. Of course, White would not miss such a useful magic card. According to the effect of Soul Summoning Spell, I can summon a magic elf of no more than 3 stars from my Tomb Area. I choose to summon Troll. When Troll reappeared in White's summoning zone, he opened the second card in the hidden zone in front of Luo Boat. Then I'll activate the second magic card, Berserk Spell. A crimson-red light erupted from Berserk Spell. The Troll was instantly enveloped in the red light. Its body expanded rapidly in the red light, and its originally large body grew even larger. And its attack power was temporarily increased by 500 points. The aftereffect of Berserk Spell was that its attack power would be reduced by 500 points in the next round. But this Troll was destined to not have a next round. Next, I'll use the normal summon. Werther pulled out a card from his hand and said in a hurried tone, Normal summon, Weapon Gunner. Card name, Weapon Gunner. Level, *****. Attack, 1400. Defense, 500. Ultimate skill, Weapon Form. This magic elf card was designed by Dake based on the scabbard. It could use the ultimate skill, Weapon Form, to permanently turn itself into a weapon card and attach itself to one of the magic elf cards. After weapon form, the attack power of Weapon Gunner would be halved to 700 points. White said without hesitation, Weapon Gunner, weapon form, equip target, troll. The projection of the gunner soldier transformed into a steel spear after Kirin gave the command. It flew to the troll, and was firmly grabbed by the troll. At this time, even Luo Boat could clearly see White's intention. His expression immediately changed from the cautious attitude of seeking victory through stability to endless annoyance. After equipping Weapon Gunner, Troll's attack power increased by 700 points, from the initial 1,500 points to a total of 2,700 points. At this time, if Sacrificial Impact was used, its attack power would increase by another 500 points. This meant that Troll would gain 3,200 points of attack power in this round. Wait, 3,200? Luo Boat suddenly quivered. His Serenity Spellcaster attack power was fixed at 1,400 points during his opponent's turn, and his remaining HP was 2,000 points. This meant that if White wanted to defeat him in this round, he still lacked 200 points of attack power. 200. As long as I can survive this round, I still have a chance. No, as long as I can survive this round, I will definitely win. Luo Boat fiercely clenched his fists. At this time, how could he not know that he had fallen into White's trap? None of the 3 cover cards were Counter Shield or Mutual Destruction. If he did not choose to play it safe at this critical moment, but in this world, the most untrustworthy thing was if. Luo Boat gritted his teeth and waited for White to use Sacrificial Impact on Troll. But it did not happen. White looked up at him and suddenly said, Luo Boat, you want to win too much. Of course, I want to win too. So, activate the magic card, Knight's Charge Horn. He slowly flipped open the last of the 3 closed cards. Knight's Charge Horn. It can boost the morale of our magic elves and increase their attack by 200 points. Troll's attack power, 2,700, 2,900. Let us end this duel of the brave. White raised her hand and pointed straight at Luo Boat. Troll, use the ultimate skill, Sacrificial Impact, on Serenity Mage. Roar! The projection of the giant monster, that was covered in bloody light, launched a fatal charge forward. Luo Boat could only watch as his Serenity Mage was smashed into pieces. Then, under the effect of Sacrificial Impact, the Troll's attack power increased to 3,400 points. Even after colliding with the Serenity Mage's attack power of 1,400 points, it still dealt 2,000 points more damage. And these 2,000 points of damage bombarded Luo Boat's HP. 20000, Iron Fist Fighter, HP reduced to 0. Winner, Hero's Son. The mechanical sound of the dual disc sounded at the same time. This duel between the Knights Academy finally came to an end with the Knight's Charge Horn. After a short pause, whether it was the ring or the audience outside, they all burst into applause. Ophelia, who was beside Hephaestus, clapped her hands especially hard. Hephaestus rolled her eyes and mumbled as she waited for her daughter to come on stage. In her opinion, the reason why White Gouda won was because the opponent was too weak. If she couldn't even grasp the victory in front of her, how could she fight on the battlefield? But too strong was easy to break. Not good. Hephaestus seemed to have thought of something, and a layer of mist covered her eyes. On the stage, Senior Sister Judy announced the victory of Hero's Son. Of course, more people wanted to see Hero's Son win when choosing between Hero's Son and Hero's Son's follower. This had a very positive effect on the promotion of the simulated duel. It could be said that White's victory and Luo Boat's victory were at least twice as effective. Therefore, as a business of the simulated duel, Dake Dimeng was very happy to see this result. On the other side, Eve and Erin were so excited that they clapped. Under normal circumstances, there should be a script for this type of exhibition match. But they didn't have a script. To be able to achieve this ideal result, it could only be said that they were lucky. However, the exhibition match wasn't over yet. The second half was the main event. The twins couldn't help but pray. White and Luo both shook hands under senior sister Judy's guidance, showing the spirit of friendship first, competition second. Then, senior sister Judy interviewed the two players in the exhibition match amidst the applause. She didn't mention the outcome at all. She only asked the two about their opinions and how much they liked the simulated duel. White and Luo both's answers were slightly different, but their gradually rosy cheeks clearly showed their love for the simulated duel game. After the interview ended, senior sister Judy gestured for the two to leave the stage. Then, she interacted with the audience for a while before finally getting to the main topic. Without a doubt, Hero's son and his friend's performance was very exciting. Even I, Judy, couldn't help but want to try it out after watching their duel. But the exhibition match isn't over yet, so Judy can't leave the stage yet. Next, let's welcome the two star players from the Mage Academy. Mage Academy, Grade 5, Silver Dragon Lady, Pan-Duola Doragon. Mage Academy, Grade 4, Daughter of Chilly Winter, Winnie Scotty. When the names of these two people were announced, the audience almost instantly broke out into applause that was even more intense than the previous match. Obviously, Hero's son was famous, but it was only at the level of "I've heard of him." In fact, he was just famous. However, Silver Dragon Lady and Daughter of Chilly Winter were very popular. The audience's love for them was obviously more enthusiastic. This was especially true for the fans who had watched them from their debut to their rise to fame. Many of them treated them like their own daughters. They were also commonly known as mom fans and dad fans. There were even more support teams and fan clubs. When the two-star duelists stepped onto the stage, the audience's applause was deafening. This terrifying popularity even made Doc wonder if the remuneration he and the others had given him was too little. But with the current first edition cards, it might not be enough for them to perform. Dake looked at Pan-Duola on the stage and started to worry. Pan-Duola and Winnie seemed to be used to the audience's enthusiasm. They didn't look at the audience, nor did they have any intention of responding. After a brief introduction, Judy smiled and said, "In the first half, through Hero's son and his friend's amazing performance, we truly understood the overall rules and mechanics of the simulated duel. We also saw how advanced the duel discs are. After the official release, not only will we have more duel discs with different themes, but we will also have different voice cards. Perhaps one day, everyone will be able to hear Judy's voice on the duel discs. Now, let's begin the second half. Silver Dragon Lady and Daughter of Chilly Winter will give us a more in-depth demonstration. Even if it's a universal simulated duel, it will still be as deep as a magic duel." Wait, I think I heard the organizer's voice. Okay, I heard it. Then, there will be a slight change in the card deck construction in the second half of the exhibition match. Pan-Duola and Winnie walked to the card table and listened to Judy talk about the so-called temporary change. They nodded slightly and didn't have any objections. Judy said, "That's it then. This time, the card deck construction won't be shown to each other. I will show you 5 cards in turn. You can choose 2 cards from the 5 cards. During the card distribution process, I will shuffle the cards randomly. This will continue until everyone has 40 cards." Pan-Duola and Winnie looked at each other and immediately understood the meaning of this new set of rules. According to this new set of rules, the two sides wouldn't be able to know each other's card deck. They wouldn't be able to completely follow their original plan and would have more requirements for immediate adaptability. This was the so-called battle of wits. It was also more to their liking. Since you all understand, let's roll the dice first. The one with the bigger number gets to choose first. Judy took out 2 dice and gave one to each of them. And this new set of rules was also magnified and displayed by the projector. After the audience read and understood the rules, they all widened their eyes. They felt that someone was making things difficult for their duelists behind the scenes. White and Luo both, who had already left the stage, were very glad. Fortunately, we didn't use this set of rules. Otherwise, it would be really hard to imagine. On the stage, Panduola and Winnie had tied 3 times in a row. Finally, the 4th time, the winner was decided with a difference of 2 points. Winnie got the right to choose first. Judy nodded and took the box with the 3 sets of cards in her hand. Then, she bent her finger and created a magic curtain between the two to separate their vision. Then, she walked to Winnie's side and took out 5 cards from the box and put them on the card table for display. The cards on display appeared in the air behind them through the projection. As long as they didn't look back, they wouldn't see it. The audience, on the other hand, could see which cards they had chosen. Updated on the 16th, 12,000 plus words, 4,000 guaranteed, 8,000 plus chapters. Good night. 5/15. Chapter 599. No matter if it was Panduola or Winnie, both of them were extremely fast when it came to choosing 2 out of 5. In order to let the audience have a better look, Judy even deliberately slowed down the speed at which she dealt the cards, which slowed down the process. In the ring, Dake looked at the new set of rules and pondered, "This set of rules is a little interesting." Although the rules couldn't be used in the magician duel, since the cards couldn't be shared, it wasn't a problem at all in a simulated duel. If the results are good, maybe it can be used as a special competition system in the future. The organizer of the competition will prepare a card pool, and the duelists will choose 2 out of 5 cards to build the deck. This can also reduce the difference in strength caused by the financial gap between the duelists. After all, the cards in the simulated duel can be bought as long as you have money. This is different from the magician duel. But this game hasn't become popular yet. Why am I thinking about the competition already? No, I can't bite off more than I can chew. Dake raised his head and continued to focus on the 2 seniors. As for the new rules, where did they come from? Since he didn't propose it, it was naturally Claire who changed it. Remember this. https://m. VIP can't you? VIP. Although Panduola and Winnie chose their cards very quickly, it didn't mean that they didn't care about it. On the contrary, their brains were working at high speed. Every time they chose a card, they would choose between the old and new ideas. Their focused expressions were quite similar, and they had the temperament of a scholar from the Magician Academy. In addition, both of them had long black hair, snow-white skin, and delicate facial features. It was like a reflection of 2 different grades. However, Panduola was taller, with well-proportioned muscles and a slim waist. Winnie was relatively shorter, and she didn't have a strong body like Panduola. She didn't train her body much, and her appearance was more delicate. When the 2 stood together, Panduola was admired, and Winnie was protected. But no matter which one it was, they were both very popular. After a while, the stage construction finally ended, and both sides received a complete set of 40 cards. Among these 40 cards, there were inevitably some single cards that weren't very useful, but this actually made the competition more interesting. After talking to the audience, Senior Sister Judy asked the 2 girls to choose a dual disc and put it on. Then, she taught them how to use the dual disc and took the opportunity to show them. Although it was Panduola and Winnie's first time using the dual disc, they were familiar with it and quickly got the hang of it. Duelist, please create your title. When they activated the dual disc, they heard a monotonous voice prompt. Come in, Silver Dragon Lady. Disembark, daughter of frigid winter. After ascending the stairs, the 2 of them looked at each other, stood up, and raised the dual disc to connect with each other. A moment later, a voice prompt sounded from the dual disc, connection successful. Silver Dragon Lady versus Chilly Winter Lady. It was exactly the same as what White and Luo Boat had demonstrated. Thick iron chains drilled out from under their feet and extended forward along both sides, instantly connecting them. Crack. The venue was connected. The entire venue suddenly burned with projections of flames, and numbers representing health points appeared in the flame frames at both ends. In the middle of the venue, the words, Preparation Stage, also appeared. Panduola looked down at the dual disc that was automatically shuffling the cards. She had a strange feeling in her heart that was slightly different from before. Although she didn't deliberately look at the audience, she knew that Hephaestus must be watching from somewhere. I see. Is this the feeling of having a family member watching from below the stage? Panduola narrowed her eyes slightly and recalled the first time Dake Dimming stepped onto the duel arena in this open-air duel hall. At that time, he seemed to be a little melancholy because he found Arvet in the audience. This feeling is surprisingly good. Panduola immediately looked up and looked at Winnie Scardi opposite her. She didn't have much competitive spirit towards this junior who was 1 year younger than her, but sorry, she had to win this mock duel. Winnie noticed her gaze and raised the corners of her mouth as if responding. Then, after the shuffling of cards, both sides lit up a button on the duel disc. A huge projection of dice jumped out and spun rapidly in front of both sides. The dice gradually stopped spinning and determined the points. Panduola, 5 Winnie, 6. Looks like I've won. A smile appeared on Winnie's face. Although there was a rule in the mock duel that one could not attack at the beginning, she still believed that the one who made the first move would have the initiative in their hands. It's just dice. Panduola replied faintly. Then, both sides drew their cards at the same time. As the 5 cards were in their hands, both sides' expressions changed slightly as they quickly thought about it. The preparation stage, above the venue, also changed to battle stage. Below the battle stage was the first round 1. Among them, 1 represents the round of the first player to make a move. The battle begins. As the referee, Judy spoke at the right time. Winnie smiled slightly and drew 1 card from the 5 hands. Then, she directly activated it. I'll activate the venue card, Flaming Mountain, from my hand. At the beginning of the battle, Winnie directly used the venue card to set up the venue. As the Flaming Mountain image appeared in the grid in the middle of the venue, the 2 sides of the venue suddenly bulged up a continuous mountain range. Blazing flames jumped on the mountain range, and blood-red lava rolled and flowed on the mountain range. Winnie, whose name was Chilly Winter's Daughter, chose a set of fire elemental cards. After she activated Flaming Mountain, she immediately drew the second card and said loudly, "In the fire arena, a magic elf with the ultimate skill, Fire Elemental Eye, can be special summoned without using up the summoning quota. Therefore, I'll special summon a 4-star magic elf, Fire Elemental Lizard. Card name, Fire Elemental Lizard. Race, Elemental. Attribute, Fire. Attack, 1800. Defense, 600. Ultimate skill, Fire Elemental Eye. The fire elemental lizard born from the flames appeared in the summoning area. Winnie continued to summon without thinking. I'll use Defense Expression to summon a 3-star magic elf, Elemental Totem, Fire. Card name, Elemental Totem, Fire. Attack, 0. Defense, 2000. Ultimate skill, Fire Elemental Halo. In the presence of Elemental Totem, Fire, other than Elemental Totem, Fire, our Fire Elemental Magic Elf will receive a 300 attack bonus. In addition to the Flaming Mountains field effect, Fire Elemental Magic Elf will receive a 200 attack bonus. Therefore, Fire Elemental Lizard's attack will be increased to 2300. I'll add another card. End of turn. With only 1 card left in her hand, Winnie announced the end of the turn. The words above the arena instantly changed to First Round, 2. It increased its attack to 2300 in one go. Panduola looked at the cards in his hand calmly, then drew a magic card and said, "If that's the case, I'll borrow your arena first. Activate Fire Elemental Eye, special summon a magic elf with Fire Elemental Eye, Fire Elemental Warrior. Card name, Fire Elemental Warrior. Race, Elemental. Attribute, Fire. Attack, 1700. Defense, 700. Ultimate skill, Fire Elemental Eye. When the Fire Elemental Warrior, with a sword and shield, was projected out of the summoning area, Winnie's expression clearly changed. Senior Sister Judy had already explained, in the simulated duel, almost all arena cards change the entire body, and the field effect is applicable to both sides. Unfortunately, the Elemental Eye series of Magic Elemental Magic Elves generally have low attack and defense. This Fire Elemental Warrior is even lower than Fire Elemental Lizard. Let's see what else Panduola can do. As soon as she finished speaking, Panduola had already used his normal summon for this round. I'll use Attack Indication to summon a 2-star magic elf, Treasure Chest 777. It's your magic elf. Susan and Lucy immediately pulled AI Ma's sleeves and said. AI Ma glanced at Dake's back in dissatisfaction. Treasure Chest 777 could be considered a very unique magic guide fairy. There were very few students in the academy who possessed this magic guide fairy. Dake Dimeng did not express anything even though it had received inspiration from her. Although it was called a treasure box monster, 777 treasure box monster was more like a slot machine that looked like a treasure box monster. After Panduola summoned it, he said, 777 treasure chest monster, use 777. The 777 treasure chest monster moved with the momentum, and the right lever automatically pulled down. The 3 numbers on the lid of the treasure chest immediately began to flip. 3 seconds later, the lever rebounded and the numbers stopped moving. 777 half a second later. The lid of the treasure chest suddenly opened, and it expanded like a balloon. My luck is not bad. Panduola glanced at Winnie, and a faint smile appeared on his face. Winnie was also staring at 777 treasure chest monster. She saw that the attack and defense of this magic guide fairy had increased from 700 to 2,100. A 2-star magic guide fairy with 2,100 attack and defense. There was an uproar in the audience. This was not the first time that 777 treasure chest monster had appeared on the stage of a duel, but there were almost no duelists who could shake out 777. It was the first time for many people to see the effect of this killing move, and they suddenly had an indescribable excitement. But back to the arena. Even if 777 treasure chest monster had an attack and defense of 2,100, Winnie's fire element lizard had an attack of 2,300, which was still higher than 777 treasure chest monster. Even if elemental totem fire was killed, fire element lizard's attack was still higher than fire element warrior. Winnie would still have a 4-star magic guide elf in her field. Thus, after being slightly surprised, Winnie did not look at the treasure chest monster again, but stared at Panduola's movements. The 2 summons were just the beginning. Panduola then took out 2 cards consecutively. I'll put these 2 cards on hidden cards, and then 777 treasure chest monster, attack elemental totem. Roar. 777 treasure chest monster suddenly opened its lid, and the white light that shot out from it instantly shot through elemental totem fire. Fire element lizard's attack was instantly reduced to 2,000. Then, Panduola continued to command without hesitation, fire element warrior, attack fire element lizard. They were both fire elemental magic guide fairies, and both of them had an attack increase of 200 under the effect of Flaming Mountain. But fire element warrior's attack was 100 points less than fire element lizard. This 100 points would cause fire element warrior to be killed instantly when it attacked fire element lizard. Panduola's actions were undoubtedly suicidal. Unless... Winnie thought a lot at this moment. Unless Panduola has mutual destruction or counter shield in the hidden cards, but if it were me, I would definitely save these 2 cards for later. She narrowed her eyes slightly, and saw that Fire Element Warrior was killed without a doubt. Panduola's HP was reduced by 100 points. However, Panduola did not do anything else. If it's not mutual destruction or counter shield, then what could it be? Could it be Fire Furnace? Card name, Fire Furnace type. Item card effect. For every fire elemental magic guide fairy that is destroyed in the battle, the fire residue in the fire furnace will increase by 1. When the fire residue is greater than or equal to 3, a furnace fairy of the same level as the fire residue can be summoned. But that's not right. If it's Fire Furnace, she doesn't need to commit suicide now. Then, it's Dead Man's Wail. No, that's not right either. What is it? Winnie instantly fell into a circle of thoughts, and her brows were tightly knitted together. However, after Panduola completed the operation, he stopped and said, "The turn is over." A wave of voices filled with doubts suddenly rose. The audience below the stage also had a puzzled look on their faces. It can't be a simple mistake, right? Someone could not help but say. After all, people make mistakes, and even horses stumble. No matter how perfect a person is, it's impossible to never make a mistake. Get lost, our Panduola can't make a mistake. Similar curses and arguments were heard one after another. Winnie calmed herself down and forced herself to focus on the cards in her hand, but she was still affected. She quickly drew cards, and the cards in her hand changed from 1 to 3. Then, she looked up at Panduola, took out a card from her hand, placed it in the hidden cards, and flipped it open. Activate item card. Sword wings. The sharp sword light descended on the back of the fire elemental lizard, and the two blade-like wings angrily spread open. The fire elemental lizard let out an intimidating roar, and its attack increased from 2,000 points to 2,300 points again. Then, Winnie flipped another card in the hidden cards and issued an order, Fire Elemental Lizard, burn the treasure chest monster to ashes. Since Panduola's hidden cards did not have mutual destruction or counter-shield, then there was no need to worry when launching an attack. However, when the Fire Elemental Lizard's white light hit treasure chest 777, Panduola suddenly flipped open his hidden cards. Activate Mutual Destruction. At that moment, an extremely shocked expression appeared on Winnie's face. She could not understand why Panduola would leave this mutual destruction card here to use. If Panduola did not plan to use this mutual destruction card from the beginning, then he should not have ordered the Fire Elemental Warrior to launch a suicidal attack. And she did indeed order the Fire Elemental Warrior to launch a suicidal attack, but she did not use mutual destruction. This could only mean that she did not have mutual destruction. However, she did have mutual destruction again. Bang! Treasure chest 777 was shattered by the Fire Elemental Lizard, but at the same time, the Fire Elemental Lizard was also shattered by the rebounding white light. It was slightly different from the counter-shield effect. Although mutual destruction also reflected the opponent's attack and specially calculated the damage of attack strength, defense strength. However, it could not protect one's magic elf from being destroyed. Panduola, 7,900, 7,700 Winnie, 8,000, 6,300. Winnie suddenly fell into a great disadvantage. She only had 3 hidden cards in her field, and she only had 1 card left in her hand. On the other hand, Panduola still had 1 hidden card left in her field, and she only had 1 card left in her hand. But she could still draw 2 cards. End of turn. Winnie took a deep breath and calmed herself down as much as possible. She realized that she seemed to have been disrupted by the mutual destruction card. It's my turn. Panduola said lightly and drew 2 new cards from the top of the deck. After the cards were in her hand, the corners of her mouth curled up slightly. She drew 1 card and said, "In that case, I'll use attack indication to summon Meow Meow." The gray cat with half-closed eyes was projected in the summoning area. Card name, Meow Meow level. Attack, 1500 defense. 1500 ultimate skill. None Meow Meow, which had 1500 attack and defense, was a blank board in the simulated duel. However, Panduola still chose it out of the 5 options. Meow Meow, attack. After completing the summoning, Panduola casually launched her attack. Winnie had 3 hidden cards in her field, but none of them were activated. Winnie, 6,300, 4,800. Panduola looked at her and said, "End of turn." Winnie's expression was solemn as she drew 2 cards from the top of the deck and added them to her hand. Then she took out a card and said, "I'll use guard indication to summon Kettle." The frequent appearances of this petite magical elf left a deep impression on the audience. After summoning Kettle, Winnie did not make another move. End of turn. Panduola narrowed her eyes as she looked at her 3 hidden cards and drew 2 new cards from the top of the deck. Then she placed one of the cards in the hidden cards area, causing the number of hidden cards to increase from 1 to 2. Then she summoned again, "I'll use guard indication to summon Ibu." Squeak squeak. Ibu, who was only 1 star, jumped onto the stage excitedly. Dake grinned below the stage. Card name, Ibu level, Attack, 100 Defense, 100 Ultimate Skill. Circle Pupil's effect in a simulated duel was to reduce the opponent's Magic Elf's attack by 1/5. Therefore, this Magic Elf card was useful in crucial moments. But in the 2 out of 5, it was not necessary to choose 2. Panduola seemed to only want a Ibu. Just like this summoning, it did not have much meaning. Both sides seemed to be in a predicament of having no cards in their hands and were in a stalemate. Panduola announced the end of the turn. A new turn began. Winnie finally made a move after drawing her cards. She raised her chin slightly and said, "Activate Fire Elemental Eye and summon Fire Elemental Eye from my hand. Flame Ghost." Card name, Flame Ghost level, attack, 2100 defense, 900 ultimate skill. Fire Elemental Eye. A magic elf that looked like a flame ghost was projected out with an eerie howl. Winnie suddenly shouted, "Flame Ghost, attack meow meow." Awoo! Flame Ghost pounced forward. Flame Ghost's attack was boosted to 2300 by Mountain of Flames, and it easily sent Meow Meow to the graveyard and dealt 800 damage to Panduola. Panduola, 7700, 6900. As Flame Ghost successfully destroyed one of the opponent's magic elemental spirits in battle, the effect has been triggered. Open card. Follow up. Flame Ghost, attack Ibu. Squeak. Ibu was mercilessly sent into graveyard by Flame Ghost amidst its wails. There were no more cards in Panduola's summoning area. The turn has ended. Winnie managed to turn the tables. Panduola frowned slightly. She picked out a card and looked at it. Then she put it back and took out another card. It's time. She relaxed her brows and summon a 3-star magic elf with attack, Spirit of the Bonfire. A magic elf that looked like a bonfire appeared in Panduola's summoning area. Card name, Spirit of the Bonfire level, attack, 900 defense, 300 ultimate skill. Separate and separate Spirit of the Bonfire's flames suddenly rose, and the black hole hidden in the flames was distorted and elongated. It opened its mouth and roared at the Flame Ghost. Attack. Under the duelist's command, Spirit of the Bonfire, which only had 1100 damage even with Mountain of Flames' buff, like a mantis trying to stop a chariot, it launched a suicidal attack at the Flame Ghost which had 2300 damage. Unsurprisingly, Spirit of the Bonfire was shattered by the rebounding attack, but it was not sent into the graveyard. Instead, it split into 3 bonfires on the spot. Card name, Bonfire level, attack, 300 defense, 100 ultimate skill. Separate and separate. As long as all 3 bonfires existed, Panduola would be able to use a normal summon in the next turn to reform them into Spirit of the Bonfire. But there was no more next turn. Panduola obviously did not want to drag this out any longer. She stretched out her hand and pointed her sword at the Flame Ghost. She suddenly shouted, "Continue to attack." Bang! The first bonfire rushed towards the Flame Ghost like a moth to the flame, but it was shattered by the counterattack. The second bonfire also rushed forward without any hesitation and was shattered by the counterattack again. The third bonfire did not hesitate and lined up to die. Every time the 3 bonfires committed suicide, Panduola's HP would drop by 1800 points. After 3 attacks, it dropped by 5400 points. Coupled with the suicidal attack of the Spirit of the Bonfire, it dropped by a total of 6600 points. The remaining 6,900 points of HP dropped to only 300 points in the blink of an eye. It made people tremble in fear. But Panduola's expression did not change at all. After she completed this operation calmly, she finally opened a cover card in the cover card area. Blazing flames suddenly rose. The furnace of flames burned fiercely. Fire furnace. Winnie gritted her teeth and said, Panduola placed 2 cover cards in the cover card area in the first round, 2. One was Mutual Destruction and the other was Fire Furnace. She had guessed it correctly, but she also guessed it wrong. Now, in the Fire Furnace, the number 7 was faintly floating. From the moment the Fire Furnace was placed in the field until now, a total of 7 Fire Element Magic Guide Spirits were destroyed in the battle. This meant that the Fire Furnace had produced 7 fire residue. When Panduola opened it, she could summon a 7-star fire furnace spirit at most. Of course, she released it without holding back. "Come out, fire furnace spirit." Panduola retracted her arm, but she took out another card from her hand and waited quietly. The 7 fire residue fused together, and boiling magma spewed out from the fire furnace and landed in the summon area, forming a half-human fire furnace spirit. Card name: Fire Furnace Spirit Level. Attack: 3500 Defense. 2000 Killing Skill. Fire Furnace. It was a killing skill with the same name as Fire Furnace. The effect was simple and brutal. Every time the Fire Furnace Spirit killed a Fire Element Magic Guide Spirit, it would obtain 350 points, 50 points x 7, of attack power increase. When the Fire Furnace Spirit was summoned, the audience was in an uproar. The 7-star Magic Guide Spirit that was summoned at the cost of 6,600 HP was emitting a terrifying aura just by standing there. This kind of decisiveness was astonishing. The supporters of the Silver Dragon Lady cheered wildly. The supporters of the Frigid Winter Lady were worried. Another part of the audience was thinking hard. Whose card was this Fire Furnace based on? Before they could figure it out, the situation on the field had changed. When the audience thought that Panduola would summon the Fire Furnace Spirit to devour the Fire Ghost, they saw her activate one of her cards. "I'll activate the magic card Witch's Broom from my hand." Witch's Broom can clear a random card in the opponent's cover area. "Winnie, let's see whose side the Goddess of Fate is on." Panduola raised her head and revealed her jade-white neck. The magic broom flew out from the Witch's Broom and swept toward Winnie's cover area. Winnie's pupils contracted. She had a total of 2 cards left on the field, but they were both extremely crucial cards. If any of them were swept away, it would greatly affect the situation on the field. However, no matter how anxious she couldn't stop the Witch's Broom from sweeping. One of the 2 closed cards was immediately swept out. It opened up in the air and revealed the card surface. Surprisingly, it was a mutual destruction. "It's mutual destruction." Senior Sister Judy let out a timely exclamation and sucked in a breath of cold air towards the audience. "It seems that our Silver Dragon Lady is indeed favored by the Goddess of Luck. If she doesn't clear this mutual destruction, the Furnace Spirit will attack and she'll lose regretfully." The scene instantly became tense. The 2 groups of audience in the audience cheered loudly at the same time as if they would fight if they weren't careful. "It seems that the Goddess of Luck is smiling at me for the time being." Panduola smiled slightly and looked into Winnie's eyes as she extended her hand. However, just as she raised her hand, she immediately retracted it. She didn't immediately let the Furnace Spirit attack. The corner of Winnie's mouth twitched slightly. The curve at the corner of Pandora's mouth widened. "You still have a blocking card on the field. Let me think, is it a counter shield, a 3rd mutual destruction, or a soul summoning spell? It's best if it's a useful card." As she spoke, she took out another card from her hand and gracefully placed it in the cover area under the gaze of tens of thousands of audience members. After this card was placed down, she only had 1 card left in her hand. After that, she didn't continue to drag it down and suddenly ordered, "Furnace Spirit, attack." Roar. It was still a beast-like roar. The Furnace Spirit suddenly opened its mouth and spat out lava onto the Flame Ghoul. The Flame Ghoul had a strong resistance to fire skills in the natural world, but it had no resistance at all in the simulation card. With a miserable cry, the Flame Ghoul was sent to the graveyard. After that, Winnie flipped over the card as expected. "Now, I'll activate the cover, Mutual Destruction." Winnie's HP instantly dropped by 3,700 to 2,300, by 1,400 points. Winnie, 4,800, 3,400. However, under the effect of mutual destruction, the lava spat out by the Furnace Spirit rolled back after destroying the Flame Ghoul and blasted itself. The Furnace Spirit only had 2,000 points of attack, and the reflected attack would continue to deal 1,700 points of damage to Panduola after destroying it. Meanwhile, Panduola only had 300 points of HP left. Hephaestus, who was originally smiling in the ring, suddenly frowned and her sharp nails pierced into her palms. Ophelia, who was beside her, grinned. In the audience, more supporters of Silver Dragoness were shouting excitedly, and there were even people who stood up in excitement. The entire stadium was in an uproar at this moment. However, Winnie, who had activated the last card on the field, did not smile. She vaguely sensed a very ominous premonition. And as expected, Panduola flipped over the card. Activate magic card. Counter shield. A revolving wall of light appeared in front of the furnace spirit. Winnie's face turned pale. Pandora, on the other hand, put down the last card in her hand. This time, she unreservedly revealed a bright smile. Counter shield countered mutual destruction-s counterattack. A total of 3,700 points of damage was enough to instantly reduce Winnie's remaining HP to 0. 34000. Chilly Winter Maiden, HP reduced to 0. Winner, Silver Dragoness. After the mechanical voice of the dual disc sounded, Judy saw that the atmosphere was not right and quickly shouted, "Congratulations to contestant Panduola Doragon for winning this exhibition match. Contestant Winnie Scotty also performed very well. Now, let's give both contestants a big round of applause." She especially emphasized the word exhibition match to remind the supporters of both sides to calm down as soon as possible. This was just an insignificant exhibition match. However, her efforts did not seem to have the desired effect. The cheers and boos of the supporters of both contestants were still rising and falling. However, the applause was loud and abnormally loud. Judy looked at the situation that was gradually getting out of control and couldn't help but roll her eyes. She cursed in her heart. Curse all you want. I've already tried my best anyway. The creation of conflicts is also good for the spread of mock duels. The uproar outside the stadium did not really happen. After all, the audience was actually all over the place. Even if they stretched their necks as long as a snail, it was impossible for them to fight. When Panduola and Winnie sorted out the cards and walked to Judy's side, the noise in the audience gradually quieted down. Judy breathed a sigh of relief and interviewed the two contestants. She first asked, "Contestant Doragon, after experiencing the exhibition match for the first time, do you have any special opinions about this game of mock duels?" Panduola nodded slightly and said, "The design is good. Although some of the rules have been simplified, because it can transcend reality and exert the established effects of the cards, it makes it more refreshing than a magic duel and can also derive more strategies." Judy asked curiously, "Can you be more specific?" Panduola said, "For example, Internecine and Shield of Retaliation have no strength limit. They can reflect any attack that they want to reflect, and they can also reflect each other. This doesn't exist in a magic duel." Judy blinked and asked, "Then do you think this difference is good or bad?" Panduola said, "I've already said it before. It's designed well. As a game with more entertainment for the masses, a mock duel shouldn't be exactly the same as a magic duel. We can do things that will never happen in a magic duel in a game of mock duels. Isn't this a delightful kind of fun?" "Indeed." Judy smiled and said, "When I tried a mock duel before, I had a similar feeling." Then, Student Scotty, do you have anything you want to say after this exhibition match? Winnie Scotty faced the audience and smiled faintly. "I admit, the older the ginger, the wiser." The atmosphere suddenly became stagnant. Before the audience outside the arena was about to start a second scolding war, Judy hurriedly saved the situation. "Student Scotty, you may not know this, but the designer of this game is not a knowledgeable old man, but a student who has just entered the second year of our academy." Winnie blinked and said, "I mean, Dake Diming's design is very sophisticated, completely unlike a student who has only been in contact with duels for a year. He amazes me and even makes me admire him." Judy said, "Ah." Panduola on the side had already covered her mouth and laughed. The audience's attention was completely hooked, and the noise gradually rose. Dake, who was in the ring, couldn't help but cover his face. Although he had claimed that he was the mastermind behind the Easter Duel Festival, that was just a trivial matter. But a mock duel was different. If the development went smoothly, simulated duels might become the mainstream entertainment of this world in the next few years, or even a decade or so. Therefore, he didn't want to go to the front of the stage at all. Once exposed, there was no need to think about it. Troublesome things would definitely follow. It wasn't that it was dangerous. It was that someone would definitely come up to him and ask him to design some outrageous cards, or directly ask him to buy rare cards. When that time came, his portrait might be posted everywhere. If he wanted to go out alone in the future and experience the atmosphere of an adventurer, he might have to disguise himself. It was really inconvenient. But senior sister Winnie said it, so he couldn't complain. After all, he didn't ask anyone to keep it a secret. So it's all my fault now that I'm pushing the blame? Dake couldn't help but raise his eyelids. He already felt that the two students next to him were looking at him strangely. Hey Dake. Dake. Ha ha ha. On the stage. Judy stopped the topic in time and didn't mention the designer's name too much. She asked Panduola and Winnie a question each and ended the post-match interview. But this was only a temporary measure. The name Dake Dimming wasn't famous in the public, but the surname Dimming was indeed famous. Paper couldn't cover the fire. He just hoped that the following Silver Cup points competition would make the audience forget this insignificant name. 17th update. 10,000 plus words, 4,000 guaranteed, 6,000 plus chapters. I overslept today and didn't say goodnight. I'll continue to write and try to finish the 18th update by midnight tonight. 8/15. Chapter 600. There was no doubt that the two exhibition matches had raised the audience's interest in the simulated duels to the highest level. Even though Panduola and Winnie had left the stage, the audience's voice still lingered. The audience noisily discussed the cards and tactics that appeared in the two exhibition matches, especially the various kinds of counterattacks, and counterattacks. Counter shield and mutual injury were the cards that were mentioned the most frequently. After all, these were extraordinary cards that were rarely seen in magic duels. The kind of counterattack that could be used in a desperate situation was fascinating. In addition, powerful magic elven cards like Kettle, Lion Beast, and Blue Eyes White Dragon were also frequently mentioned. The audience couldn't help but discuss the origin of these magic elven cards. Which duelists' magic cards did they come from? Not only the audience, but also the students and professors in the ring zone were very interested in the simulated duels. At least in Shang Malian Academy, the simulated duels had replaced magic chess as the #1 entertainment. Dake, Claire, and the others were very happy about this. In such a good atmosphere, this year's Silver Cup finally entered the official competition. Remember the website, Vipkanchu. VIP the host, Judy, eloquently guided the audience and gradually brought their attention back to the Silver Cup. What worried her more was that the Silver Cup was only a stage for the new second-year duelists. Would it not be exciting enough under the two exhibition matches? But when she thought that today's audience came for the Silver Cup, she didn't think too much about it. Before the official competition begins, we have a 15-minute break. After that, our beloved vice principal will announce the official start of the competition. And during this 15-minute break, every dueling hall will release a limited supply of dueling discs. The audience who buys a dueling disc today will get a total of 20 basic card packs. The audience had a 15-minute break, but the second-year students didn't. When the piano piece Husker on His Deathbed played during the break, every second-year duelist felt the vibration of their branch card. Beep, beep, beep. A series of beeps sounded almost simultaneously. Dake's heart skipped a beat. Like the students around him, he reached into his card bag and took out his branch card. Inject magic power to activate. Oh! It was indeed the schedule of the points competition. Normally, the Silver Cup's points competition would have multiple matches happening at the same time. The only exception was the opening ceremony, which was held in the center of the stadium, on the dueling platform. In order to ensure that the opening ceremony was sufficiently exciting, the Duel Club would also intentionally adjust the competition schedule. For example, they would adjust the competition time of some famous and powerful contestants to this afternoon or evening. Therefore, Dake was stunned when he clicked on X. Dolong, who was next to him, sensed his strange phenomenon. He didn't even open his scorpion before coming over to peek. Dake subconsciously tilted his branch card, then laid it flat and said, "There's nothing to see." "Haha, you're quite busy." Dolong laughed dryly and quickly retracted his head. Then he clicked on his scorpion with trembling hands. The first line of competition that popped up from Scorpion was frowny-faced Dolong Teddy versus Dake Dimming. Time: October 4th, round 11. Dake glanced at Dolong, shrugged, and looked away. The competition schedule announced today didn't involve Saturday and Sunday. However, he had 3 matches on his schedule. Although the first and third matches were separated into 3 timings, it clearly didn't make sense. Is this the same as catching a fat sheep and squeezing it to death? I remember that the head of the duel club this year is Inia Knight from the Knights Academy, right? KSK. Yay. Just as Dake was cursing in his mind, Pitten, who was sitting on the other side of him, suddenly shouted in excitement. Dake asked curiously, "Did something good happen?" Pitten said proudly, "Not bad, I don't have a bye today. The first match should be tomorrow or the day after." "Oh." Dark nodded and turned around, preparing to adjust his mentality as soon as possible to prepare for the upcoming duel. "All right, Dake, what about you?" Pitten asked. "Dolong said you have a lot. What do you mean by a lot?" "Nothing." Dake said, "Just that there are a lot of matches." As he spoke, he tilted his branch card towards Pitten. Pitten lowered his head and read, "First match. Dake Dimming versus White Gouda. Time: October 4th, round 1. Hey, White, you're in the first match?" In the second-year Knights Academy area, Luo Boat nudged White's waist and asked. White hurriedly moved to the side and said, "You saw it, so what are you talking about?" Luo Boat chuckled and said, "Those guys at the duel club are really annoying. They actually put you and Dake together in the first match. So, what do you think?" White took a deep breath and said, "What else can I do? Even though I know it's a little early, this is the chance I've been dreaming of. Even if I can't catch him, I still want to try." "Wait, you're not thinking of letting Dake avenge you, are you?" Luo Boat's eyes flashed and said, "How can that be? I'm definitely on your side." White sneered, "I don't believe you, redneck. Even if I can't win, I won't lose too badly." Luo Boat whispered, "That's hard to say." White quivered and raised his eyebrows. "What?" Luo Boat hurriedly said, "Of course I don't believe you'll be killed. After all, you're the man who just beat me. Isn't that right?" White was suddenly a little speechless, and then sat down with waning interest, looking in Dake's direction and taking a deep breath. Every time he saw Dake's back, he always wanted to take out Taboo Love to check it out. But unknowingly, it had been a long time since he'd used that magic card to peek into other people's emotions. White suddenly asked Luo Boat, "Say, I just helped him. Will his feelings toward me go up?" Luo Boat slowly turned to him and opened his mouth in surprise, as though he were astonished that White would suddenly think of such a thing. "Don't look at me like that." White turned his face and looked at Dake again. "Not only is he our savior, but he also saved our mother. Of course I want to have a good relationship with him. But it seems a little difficult." Luo Boat blinked and suddenly slapped his head, saying, "It must be because you're too weak." "That's right, it must be because you're too weak to make him take you seriously." White. "Ah." Luo Boat patted him on the shoulder meaningfully, saying, "Do well, young man." White was dumbfounded. On the other side, in the second-year Magic Academy area, Saraswati was playing with the branch card in her hand, deep in thought. After a while, she suddenly asked, "Heidi, are you playing this afternoon?" Her hardcore supporter, Heidi Euphemia, nodded, "Yes, the 7th round." "What about you?" Sarah raised her head slightly. "I'm not playing this afternoon." "Heidi, then," Sarah smiled, "but I'm playing tonight." Heidi curiously asked, "What about your opponent? Who's so unlucky to meet you?" Sarah shook her head. "I'm going to leave for a while. I probably won't be able to watch your match in the afternoon." Heidi immediately revealed a shocked expression. Sarah said seriously, "I need to prepare, I'll be facing a strong opponent tonight. Strong opponent? Heidi couldn't help but guess. AI ma? Sarah shook her head, saying, It's Dake. She put the branch card in her bag and said in a low voice, I still have an experiment to complete. I hope I can make it. You have to do your best. Heidi nodded. I will. Although the opponent is that guy Justin Wayne. Sarah clenched her fists and said, You're both squad leaders, so there's not much of a difference in strength between the two of you. I think you'll win. Heidi's cheeks reddened, and she quickly said, I'll definitely win. Sarah nodded with satisfaction, got up, and left the audience. About 5 minutes before the 15-minute break ended, Dake received a reminder to go to the contestant waiting room. He said a few words to Doran and Pittan, then got up and walked outside. He and White weren't the only ones who received the reminder. The students in front of them also came out one by one. When Dake saw Deanna was already jogging over. Which match are you in? Second match. Deanna said excitedly. She was obviously very excited about going on stage. Dake knew that she and Luoc signed up for the newcomers competition almost every week. In terms of actual combat experience, she might already be better than him. I'm in the first match, let's go. Dake smiled and led the way into the contestant passage. A few minutes later, the first batch of second-year contestants arrived at the contestant waiting room. The Duel Club member in charge of passing the message stood at the door and confirmed their identities one by one. After Dake entered the contestant waiting room, he went to the window and found that the view was perfect. He could completely see the stage. Professor Shi Erfu is going on stage. Deanna said excitedly. When the other students heard this, they all gathered around. They were all classmates. When there wasn't any division competition, their relationship was passable. A group of people crowded around the window and watched Professor Shi Erfu speak loudly on stage. They didn't know why. They didn't like to listen to this kind of official speech when they were sitting in their seats, but just by changing seats, they could taste a different flavor. The students were all excitedly discussing Professor Shi Erfu's words. The atmosphere was very lively. But Dake quietly left after watching for a while. He squeezed into the crowd and felt that White was secretly looking at him. It made him feel very uncomfortable. Isn't it just a duel on stage? What are you looking at? If you keep looking, I'll... Dake cursed silently and walked to the door of the waiting room. Professor Shi Erfu's speech was coming to an end. Next, it was the first contestant's turn to go on stage. To be honest, he had been waiting for a long time. He was even a little impatient. The 2 exhibition matches had rekindled his passion for dueling. This year's second-year students are as energetic as ever. This year's Silver Cup will be just as exciting. As the Vice Dean of the Academy, I sincerely wish that every student can learn from the competition and go one step further to become an excellent magus. Professor Shi Erfu's face was still serious on the stage, which made her beauty slightly pale. But her voice was transmitted to everyone's ears, and they instinctively listened attentively. After a very long speech, she finally put down her hand and raised her head to announce, This year's Silver Cup begins. The applause from the audience suddenly sounded like a tide. Professor Shi Erfu nodded slightly and left the stage. Then the host, Judy, took the microphone and immediately said, Then, let us warmly welcome the 2 contestants in the first duel of this year's Silver Cup. First, the contestant assigned to the red platform, the second-year knight. Yes, the well-known hero's son, White Gouda. White and Luo Boat's exhibition match clearly won him more popularity. The applause from the audience also became more intense. Judy nodded with satisfaction and continued to read, Next, the contestant assigned to the blue platform, the second-year noble. A trace of embarrassment flashed across Judy's face, but she immediately adjusted and said loudly, Some of you may have heard of his name. That's right, he is last year's Crimson Star champion, the current second-year champion, Dake Dimeng. When the name Dake Dimeng came out of Judy's mouth, especially the audience outside, they all paused for a moment, as if they were recalling the familiarity of this name. However, Yarvet Saint Dimeng, who was sitting in the front row, had already clapped hard. Beside her, Lady Camilla and Viscountess Flotty also slowly clapped their hands. And the audience seemed to have finally remembered that they had just heard this name half an hour ago. Suddenly, the applause shook the sky like a tsunami. In this unprecedentedly warm applause, Dake and White walked out of the contestants' passage one after another. Under the guidance of the staff, they walked to the middle of the duel arena. The two looked at each other and walked to the contestants' platforms on both sides of the arena. Dark took the opportunity to walk up the stairs and take a look at the audience outside. In the end, he saw Yvette and two other aunties in the front row, as well as the head maid, Olga. After he walked up the stage, he waved his hand in that direction. When Yvette waved back, he turned to the card table. "It's been a long time since the rookie competition." Dark muttered to himself as he channeled his magic power to activate the card table. The loudspeaker was activated. He knew that what he was going to say next would be broadcasted throughout the arena through the loudspeaker. So, to liven up the atmosphere, he said, "I didn't have a chance to say this before. White, you've improved a lot. Your performance in the exhibition match was amazing." White's expression froze. After a while, she spat out a word with difficulty, "Thank you." Dake smiled and said, "I should be the one thanking you. I didn't expect the first match of the Silver Cup to be between you and me. How was it? Did you prepare well?" "Of course." White nodded, but she felt that there was something wrong with this conversation. Dake smiled and said, "I hope we can both get what we need from this duel." White subconsciously agreed, "I hope so." Then, Dake stepped back and took out the pre-built Bliss card deck from his card pack. After checking it, he put it into the card slot on the card table. White saw that he had started to prepare and also took out a card deck from his card pack. Even though he had spent the past 2 days studying the simulation of the duel, the Silver Cup wasn't something that only appeared in the past 2 days. He had already constructed a set of usable cards long ago, so he was still quite confident in his heart. After both sides put in their cards, the referee and the commentator went up to the referee's seat and the commentary platform. Today's commentator was still Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson, who was now a 5th-year student, was steadily working in the duel club. He was still a commentator, and he was a commentator for the rookie competition. Dark was already quite familiar with this senior from the aristocratic academy. When Zach Wilson looked over, he nodded with a kind expression. Zach Wilson hurriedly nodded and felt an inexplicable sense of honor in his heart. Ahem. He quickly faked a cough and went into commentating mode. Today, he had come with a mission. It was rumored that a new official would make strict changes. The new president of the Noble History Research Society, Edwin Clarissa, didn't do much when he first took office, but today, the fire was finally ignited. Zach Wilson wasn't in danger, but he was ordered. He was now standing on the commentary platform and could see the performance of the second-year students most directly. Edwin gave him a very important mission, to find and record the talents of the second-year students. Not only the Noble Academy, but also the talents of the other 3 academies. If the Noble History Research Society wanted to lead the entire Noble Academy to win the school championship, they had to know themselves and their opponents. In addition to digging out the talents of their own academy, it was also necessary to spy and grasp the talents of the other academies. Zach Wilson took on this important task. Unlike Angus Jeffrey's era, Edwin didn't force people to respect his wishes and actions. He often gave back more than the value itself, which made the members of the Noble History Research Society more willing to work for him. No matter which academy, this duel should be very important. Zach Wilson adjusted his state of mind and raised his voice. "Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I'm today's commentator, Zach Wilson. I believe that the audience who often comes to watch the newcomer competition has already remembered me. So, to make a long story short, today's first official competition will be between the hero's son and the Valkyrie's son, to present the first praise to everyone. Perhaps many people haven't noticed, but the hero's son White Gouda is a student of the Knight Academy. Therefore, this year's Silver Cup is still between the Noble Academy and the Knight Academy." Beep. The referee whistled. The words, "Preparation Stage," slowly appeared in the sky above the duel arena. In front of the contestant stands of both sides, the current magic power of the magic sphere's life barrier was also displayed. The audience was already quite used to this line of numbers. However, in the exhibition match of the simulated duel, the burning life value frame made the audience suddenly realize that it could be like this. At this time, looking at the line of numbers again, it seemed particularly monotonous. Speaking of which, the magic duel competition had been monopolized after the end of the war. Therefore, in terms of equipment and appearance, there hadn't been any major improvements. Now that the simulated duel was sweeping in, perhaps it could break its monopoly. Who knows? The audience's perception couldn't affect the two contestants. After all, their thoughts wouldn't appear in the eyes of the two contestants as bullet screens. Dake pressed his hand on the card table and felt the vibration of the table when the cards were automatically shuffled. In his mind, he rehearsed the possible situations he might encounter and how to deal with them. It wasn't until the shuffling ended and the referee whistled again that he completely calmed down and focused all his attention on this duel. After the preparation stage, a 30s countdown appeared. Both sides drew their cards at the same time. The duel had truly begun. There was no countdown for each round of the simulated duel, so the duelists had plenty of time to think and react. However, in a magic duel, this obviously couldn't be replicated. The speed of thinking and reaction was also considered in a magic duel. Both sides took advantage of this extremely short 30 seconds and drew their cards almost at the same time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 magic cards were in his hand. Dake alternated them to his left hand and opened them in a fan shape. His green eyes glowed faintly. Kettle, Fantasy Beast, Ibu, Bliss 2, Moon Pendant, Bliss 3. Although it's not the best choice, it's not necessarily a bad thing. After all, it's the first match of the Silver Cup. It can't end too quickly. Let me see how much progress you've made in the past 6 months. Dake suddenly raised his head and looked at White, who was looking down at her cards. White seemed to have sensed Dake's gaze and looked up slightly, but when their gazes met, she looked away awkwardly. Tick. The sound of the round changing suddenly sounded. The 30 seconds countdown passed in the blink of an eye. Preparation stage ended. Battle stage began. At this moment, both sides instinctively chanted their usual summoning spells. From the first grade to the second grade, even Luobo's summoning time was shortened to almost 7 seconds. Luo C was even able to complete his summoning in less than 5 seconds. White's talent was even higher than Luo C's, so it wasn't surprising that she could shorten her summoning time to the limit of 3 seconds. Or rather, that was the normal standard. However, he didn't know if it was because of his mentality or his performance, but he still took almost 4 seconds to complete his summoning. Of course, this difference of 1 second wasn't much in a duel of this level. It was just that when the opponent's summoning area lit up and he was still casting, he couldn't help but feel a sense of defeat. In the blue team's summoning area, Dake didn't take the evil path and directly chose to summon Kettle. Although he had already passed the era of choosing the pot with the pot, he still didn't make a wrong move. When this red bug, with a tortoise shell, appeared in the light of the summoning, the audience, who had a deep impression of this magic elf in the exhibition match, suddenly exclaimed. The audience in the duel arena was very mobile, and not many people had seen Dake's matches. Moreover, Dake's appearances were actually very few. Only then did many people know where the Kettle card in the simulated duel came from. So this is the designer's own magic elf? All sorts of guesses appeared, and the atmosphere in the arena became lively. In this short period of time, the blue team's summoning area also lit up with a summoning light. It wasn't White's iconic troll, nor was it the radiant serpent. It was another 3-star magic elf that Dake had never seen before. Dake wrinkled his nose and smelled a hint of blood. He saw a red-skinned goblin standing quietly in the red team's summoning area. This red goblin's body was stooped and he looked rather old. He wore a shriveled magician's hat on his head and held a branch staff in his hand. The shape of a ? Rather than White's style, it was more like Tom Nixon's style. A mix of blood and dungeons? Dake smiled. That's quite fresh. Card name, Bloody Goblin Mage. Type, Elf card, level, race, demi-human, attribute, evil, magic power, 1500, attack, 900, defense, 400, ultimate skills, goblin summon, goblin rage, goblin blood shield. Even though the bloody goblin magician's attack and defense were lacking, the bloody goblin magician had a purple card with 3 ultimate skills. White had used him first, which meant that he had a lot of trust in him. The moment the bloody goblin magician appeared, he quickly gave the order. Summon goblins. Thus, the bloody goblin wizard fiercely stomped his branch magic staff, and 3 rays of red light shot out from the tip of the magic staff. Each ray of red light landed on the ground, and a red-skinned goblin appeared. After the 3 rays of red light, there were 3 bloody goblins standing in front of the bloody goblin mage. Among the 3 bloody goblins, one of them had a big waist, while the other 2 were smaller. It was easy to see the difference in their positions. A 3-star bloody goblin leader and 2 2-star bloody goblin warriors? Dake was slightly surprised. I wonder if they can be used as sacrifices? If they can, then they'll be rare magic-conducting elves. Just as he was analyzing the situation of the goblins, the 3 summoned bloody goblins had already charged towards the blue side. They weren't fast. Under normal circumstances, they wouldn't be able to break through Kettle's defense. However, this was a magic-conducting duel, not a simulated duel. The opponent didn't need to defeat Kettle, they only needed to step past it to attack the magic-conducting ball. Dake didn't have the habit of dragging the magic-conducting ball around at the beginning of the duel. He flicked his fingers and took out a illusory beast, Ibu, from his hand. In the name of Dake Dim-Eng, magic-conducting summoning. The second summoning immediately followed. Before the 3 bloody goblins had even crossed half of the field, Dake had already successfully summoned illusory beast, Ibu. Squeak. When Ibu appeared from the light, it tried its best to open its eyes wide and observe what was in front of it. The 3 ugly goblins were ferocious, but they didn't scare it. It was looking forward to evolving. After Dake completed his summoning, White began his second round of summoning. However, when the red side summoned the second magic-conducting elf, Dake had already begun his third round of summoning. The first round was only halfway through, and Dake had already completed his third round of summoning. The 3 bloody goblins crossed half of the field and all charged towards Ibu. Picking the soft persimmon seemed to be ingrained in these creatures' instincts. However, the pink radiance had already descended. Squeak. Ibu suddenly jumped and took the initiative to bathe in the light of bliss. However, in the next moment, its little face fell. Squeak, squeak, squeak. On the blue team's platform, Doc Diamond laughed out loud. Then, he placed Extreme Happiness 2 on the table. No matter how unwilling Ibu was, it didn't change the fact that it didn't use Bliss 3. Under the effects of Bliss 2, although Ibu didn't evolve, it still successfully rose to 2 stars. Ibu Mist Field. The fairies' Misty Field, Bliss, was the nemesis of the Blood series. Ibu's little face fell and it suddenly slapped its paws. Immediately, a pink mist rose up and quickly spread towards the field. In the blink of an eye, the mist covered half of the blue side. The 3 bloody goblins seemed to have entered the realm of immortals as they soared through the clouds. Of course, they weren't in the mood to do so. On the commentary platform, Zach Wilson was trying his best to interact with the audience. Ibu's transformation was beyond his understanding, and he didn't understand the mist field at all. The audience couldn't imagine what this magical elf, which had appeared in the exhibition match just now, could do other than act cute. The misty ground didn't obstruct the 3 bloody goblins. They still charged forward. However, at this moment, Dake Dim-Eng issued a new order: Ibu, use circle pupil. Squeak, squeak. Ibu's big eyes suddenly widened, and a pink heart faintly appeared in his eyes. The 3 bloody goblins that were being watched by him suddenly stopped moving forward. They looked at Ibu as if they were bewitched, their arms hanging by their sides as they lost the desire to attack. On the red team platform, after Victor successfully summoned his second magic elf, the Bloody Ogre, he hurriedly shouted, "Bloody Goblin Mage, use Goblin Berserk." Roar. The elderly goblin mage immediately raised the branch staff, and 3 more bloody rays shot out from the head of the staff. However, when the 3 bloody rays drilled into the heads of the 3 bloody goblins, it was as if they had entered a sea of mud and didn't cause any waves. Under the effects of the mist field, bliss, the target enveloped in the fairy mist wouldn't fall into an abnormal state and wouldn't go berserk. As for the mist field, bliss, it had a duration of 5 rounds. Although this wasn't very long in a real battle, it was enough in a magic duel where every second mattered. Dake Dimming crossed his arms and sat down to watch White's performance. The duel had just begun, and the 2 people in the arena hadn't revealed much emotion, but the audience outside the arena was already nervous. Ophelia Brad crossed her fingers and gripped them tightly, pursing her lips. The Blood Clan's bloodline in Werther's body had been stimulated in the last secret passage. She had no choice but to let Tom Nixon become White's warm-hearted senior and guide her. Tom Nixon's guidance was indeed effective, but the field skill released by the opponent's magic elf. Don't be nervous. Hephaestus patted Ophelia's shoulder to calm her down. Just as she was about to thank Hephaestus, Hephaestus continued. It's impossible to win. Ophelia's expression froze. In the arena, seeing that the 3 bloody goblins in the mist had become harmless fatties, White could only order the bloody ogre to attack. The bloody ogre, which was glowing with blood, beat its chest and charged into the mist field with a ferocious expression. But when it finally rushed into the fog, Ibu suddenly winked at it. Omega. Heartsuit Ibu used coquettish. The bloody ogre's attack power decreased. Its huge arm, which was hanging down forcefully, actually became soft and limp. Not only did its attack power decrease, but its attack power and speed also decreased. Ibu jumped to the side cutely and dodged the bloody ogre's attack. The first round passed in the blink of an eye amicably between the magic elves. Dida. Battle stage, 30s. The second round. Although Dake was relaxed, his speed of drawing cards was not slow at all. Once the 2 new cards were in his hands, the corner of his mouth couldn't help but curl up into an obvious arc. Demon Fox, Fairy Ibu. With Demon Fox and Bliss 3 in hand, the formula for victory was already written. But it was still bliss. Dake focused more on Fairy Ibu, thinking of how to summon her. But a live duel should not be so entertaining. Dake unknowingly relaxed. On the red arena, White drew 2 magic cards and ordered, Bloody Goblin Mage, use Goblin Blood Shield. The Bloody Goblin Mage raised his magic staff and created a blood shield that surrounded him from all directions. The red magic ball behind it was naturally surrounded as well. Then Victor immediately began to cast Sacrificial Summoning. Dake noticed White's actions and summoned the Demon Fox, in the blink of an eye. The Demon Fox beast, who was as cold as an ice beauty, stood up from the pink mist with a half-squatting posture. Its brows were cold and its fox eyes were mesmerizing. But as soon as it appeared, the Demon Fox threw a punch without hesitation. Bang! The skinny bloody goblin warrior was blasted to pieces with a single punch. BZZT BZZT BZZT. Kettle Kettle mewled. The Demon Fox turned its head and glanced at it coldly. Kettle Kettle shrunk its neck and pretended that it did not know anything. The Demon Fox showed a bright smile, but it disappeared in a flash. In the next second, it leaned forward and pounced on the other 2 bloody goblins like a gust of wind. The bloody goblins, that had lost their desire to attack, were like dead meat. The smaller, bloody goblin warrior also exploded with just 1 punch. The bloody goblin leader, with a big waist, was finally able to endure more attacks. After receiving the Demon Fox beast's attack, it finally regained its consciousness. It roared and launched a counterattack. Then, it was kicked in the face by the Demon Fox beast. Boom! It turned into magic and disappeared. It was obvious that the amount of mana these 3 bloody goblins had was not normal. There's one left. The Demon Fox landed from the sky and got into a fighting stance against the bloody ogre. The dueling ground that was filled with pink mist seemed to have become the Demon Fox's stage. The red light around the bloody ogre suddenly expanded and successfully dispelled the effect of coquettish. The effect of coquettish only lasted for a short time. After the bloody ogre recovered its attack, it started to fight the demon fox fiercely. The demon fox seemed to enjoy this kind of battle. It did not need to use its ultimate skill to defeat the bloody ogre. However, it was not an individual that would be controlled by its own desires. Therefore, after seizing the opportunity, the demon fox did not hesitate to use 8 vine fists. Blue flames rose instantly. The demon fox threw out 8 punches in an instant. Pom pom pom. Even the bloody ogre, with thick skin, was forced back by the 8 punches. The red light around its body flickered, and it was unable to resist. Ha! The demon fox leaped up and gathered its strength to throw a punch at the bloody ogre's face like a heavy hammer. However, at the moment before the bloody ogre was defeated, the bloody ogre turned into light. The demon fox's punch missed. It adjusted its posture and landed on the ground. Then, it suddenly raised its head. The bloody ogre and the bloody goblin mage turned into light at the same time and gathered with the light from the magic card in White's hand in the air. The huge sacrificial summoning array shone with a blinding red light. A humanoid magic guide elf that was burning with red flames floated out of the sacrificial summoning array. Although the magic guide elf was humanoid, it was 3 meters tall. Its body was slender, and its limbs were long and thin. Its body was covered with fine fur. Its abdomen was snow white, and the rest of its body was red. It wore a red and white swirl mask on its face, and its 2 beast ears were raised high on its head. It descended from the sky and emitted a dangerous aura. However, it was facing a 6-star magic guide elf. The demon fox's eyes were filled with excitement. 18th update, 10,000 plus words, 4,000 guaranteed, 6,000 plus 3 chapters. And November 15th, if I'm lucky, I can repay the reward today. Meow, 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 requesting monthly votes. Anniversary celebration, unlimited monthly votes. Give it to me, give it to me. Double the updates. You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.